Hello and welcome to episode 19 of Celtic Rumours TV, the Bawz and Bovril podcast with your host Mark and myself Paul. On today's show we will be taking a look at the latest rumours and gossips around Celtic.
Rumours
Michael and
TV,
Jonas will be
the Bawz and
joining us tonight and we will talk about Scottish football from last season and expectations for next season for both teams. First of all, I just hand off to Mark to do a few of our weekly shout-outs. Mark?
Oh, good evening, Paul. Thanks very much for joining us and all your help. Who have we got coming in? There's Mike Kenner, Eddie and Buzzbomb, Pedro, Bobby Sutherland. Bobby's here all the time, isn't he?
All the time.
Is that the guy you said doesn't come on the forum?
Doesn't come on the form, and he fair do. He's coming on the thing, so a big shout out there to Bobby.
Good play, Bobby, but come on the forum and get involved on that. You'll be more than welcome on that. Just the usual shout-outs to Tim Alloy, ROH and Malika, and young Ben is still recovering, obviously, for his operations in his legs. And I mentioned for the boy on the forum, was it Donny, that says he recently lost his brother, so sorry to hear that, Donny, brother. Hail, hail.
So we'll move on to some basic rumours and gossips surrounding Celtic. Is it a bit of deja vu again for Celtic, as we've been linked with James McCarthy again, who was now a free agent after his contract at Crystal Palace was ending. Is it time for Celtic to move on from past transfer targets and scout different players? Leicester City and former manager Brendan Rodgers have supposedly already made contact with Celtic regarding of buying Odsonne Edouard next season. Edouard has made his fees and clears to Celtic that he wishes to leave as soon as the transfer window is open. Now, excuse my pronunciation here, but hopefully I get it right. Bundesliga striker Tivio Averoni has been granted a work permit in the UK. Celtic have been linked with the player back in January, but now with a work permit that has been granted, the on-loan Liverpool player and youngster who plays with Union Berlin couldn't materialise due to no work permit, and that's why the deal fell through. Will Celtic, again, we knew their interest in this Liverpool player, so we'll have to wait and see. Former Celtic defender, now agent Lee Naylor, has said that Neil Lennon had no involvement in players' recruitment during his time at Celtic. Naylor has stated that former Celtic employee Nick Hammond was calling all the shots and that Neil Lennon had no input. Naylor said he approached Lennon with a centre-back and a striker, and that Neil was very impressed by both players, but Nick Hammond refused both players down point blank. Is history going to repeat itself at Celtic again, with Eddie Howe's contract negotiations going to fall at the last minute? Eddie Howe's name has again been linked heavily with the vacant spot at Crystal Palace manager's job, or is the Eddie Howe deal already done and dusted because of rumours and discussions that Stephen Welch spoke about Eddie Howe already being the manager for next season, and that he has very impressed with where the manager plays. Going on with Eddie Howe, also today it's been reported that Richard Hughes, former director of football under Bournemouth, with Bournemouth and worked under Eddie Howe's management, is in line to become Celtic's new director of football. This is all part of the package that Celtic have agreed with Eddie Howe. So here's the people involved in this deal in Eddie Howe's package. Bournemouth coaches Stephen Purchase and Simon Weather are about to join Celtic as part of Eddie Howe's coaching team. Richard Hughes will become director of football, and ex-player and former teammate Eddie Howe, Peter Grant, will become assistant manager. Eddie Howe and Peter Grant's deals are supposedly already agreed with Celtic, but due to Eddie Howe's guardianship with Bournemouth, and due to legal agreements within his legal guardianship of Bournemouth, Celtic cannot announce this deal, and that's basically, Mark, what's holding up, due to a legal issue that was put into his guardian leaf. He can't be announced as a manager of a team until this guardian leaf finishes. So my reckon is that his guardian leaf finishes on the 1st of June, and that's when Celtic can announce this whole package deal. And Eddie Howe will be entitled to a pay increase, a pay bonus as well, if Bournemouth gets promoted to the Premier League this season. So that's what I'm hearing, Mark, is the hold up. It's also been announced by Aberdeen that they have received a written transfer request from their midfielder, Lewis Ferguson. It's being reported that Aberdeen have received an insulting offer from an English Premier League club, which they turned down, and this has led to Ferguson handing in his notice. Lewis Ferguson's uncle, Barry Ferguson, who is a former Rangers player, has come out again recently and said Lewis would have no problem in joining Rangers rival Celtic, and that his family's history should not be included in his final decision they're making in the future. Should Celtic make an offer for Lewis Ferguson now, as it's clear he wants to leave Aberdeen, or risk another McGinn scenario when Celtic will lose another top young Scottish talent, slip away to their teams down south? Mark, this guardianship leaf with Eddie Howe seems to be the big hold up in his deal in coming to Celtic. So I think that's more than likely it, that it's actually a legal thing that's put into his guardian leaf why it can't be announced.
We spoke about it before, that it might, but there was talk it was something to do with his Bournemouth deal, and well, we thought, why could they not still announce it? But obviously, if it's part of the agreement, excuse me, if it's part of the agreement that they're not allowed to he's not allowed to formally take a job or that, you can see his point.
You know,
Because really, there was no way he was coming in to take charge at any time before the end of the season anyway. So hopefully it's just, as we've spoke about, he's been working behind the scenes, and it's just a matter of his contract expiring with Bournemouth.
And what about this package? The two coaches, these were these two coaches, these two first team coaches that work with him. His sister entitled won't be joined because he's now involved with Sheffield United, but these are the two coaches he wants. But the big thing for me is, and it's actually coming strongly, is Richard Hughes being director of football. That this is a whole package that Celtic and Eddie Howe came to agreement. You know, so if
that's a bit worrying, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather that the director of football was like an independent appointment. It was somebody the board had chosen, rather than the incoming manager. Unless, as we said previously, Paul, as well, that Eddie Howe's kind of recommended him, and the board has looked at him, interviewed him, spoke.
Could exactly, but
he's met the criteria.
Yeah, and it could have been like Celtic asked him, we're looking to appoint a director of football as well. How do you feel working under a director of football? Well, I worked with Richard Hughes for years at Bournemouth. I highly recommend him, the players he got me at Bournemouth, and youngsters, and how he spots talent. You know, that could be all in the negotiation talks as well, Mark, wouldn't it?
Well,
you know?
Well, obviously Celtic's not just appointing him on the say so of Eddie Howe. Well, I wouldn't like to think so. I'd like to think they've done plenty of their due diligence on him and that. If that's who they're choosing, well, we've just got to accept it, isn't it?
That's it.
The only problem for me is that
if he leaves.
Yeah, if Eddie Howe leaves in 2 or 3 years' time.
We're back to, it's like the Brendan Rodgers scenario again, when all the coaches are gone and Celtic are back to square one, Mark, aren't we?
We've all said that the director of football job, that should be the continuity. Whether the coach, the head manager or the head coach, whatever you want to call him, leaves, the director of football should still be in place to keep the continuity of the club.
Exactly. What about the interesting news about Lewis Ferguson handing in a transfer request? It hasn't been accepted yet, as far as I know. It hasn't been accepted, but he's made it clear he wants to leave. Like, should Celtic act now, Mark? Maybe trying to.
I'd like to think they have acted. I'd like to think that Lewis Ferguson will know if he wants to leave Aberdeen and he's interested in coming to Celtic. Celtic are willing to talk.
My thing is, like, obviously there must have been talks between his father and his uncle Barry. if Barry Ferguson is coming out making these statements that he'll have no problem with joining Celtic because of his family's history with Rangers. So obviously there must have been talk within the family, Mark, that he would like to join Celtic, you know.
Well, it does look like that when Barry's coming out and saying that again.
Yeah, this Barry came out and said this on a Sunday night, and I read about it on Monday. So like, it's actually recently, and then he hands in a transfer request today. Like so, like the club who put in the bid, we don't know. Do you know what I mean? So.
The gossip was that he wanted to move to England. So if
Hmm.
he moves to England, let's not make it out as if Celtic's failed to sign him. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Set in England, he's going to go to England. But if he's just looking for a move to a higher level, I'd like to think Celtic are in the mix for that.
I wouldn't like him to move to England, Mark. Like I just sit in the bench. Do you know what I mean? When he can have a year or two at Celtic, or maybe 3 years, build up his reputation, like the likes of what Stuart Armstrong did before he moved down south. Like and come a better player before he goes down there.
There's plenty of good young players left Scotland and just like basically vanished off the face of the earth.
Exactly.
Down to like smaller teams in England and that.
And he'll get
Ferguson's a better player than see like Watford. I mean Ferguson's too good to be playing for Watford.
exactly like he'll get a good opportunity in playing Champions League football, more experience against bigger teams as well, Mark.
Winning
If he yeah,
challenging for trophies.
it's only going to build up his
I,
reputation as well.
I was reading a blog the other day and they said that was one of the reasons that Eddie Howe chose to take a Celtic job
Hmm.
because they're comparing it with like the Crystal Palace and Newcastle jobs and that where he's not going to ever get any. He's not going to be winning anything. He's not challenging for anything. And according to his blog, uh, he's at a stage of his career. He wants to be at a level where he's challenging for trophies, winning stuff.
Yeah, exactly,
Of the game.
exactly. And I'm actually like the reason I put in this thing about the Crystal Palace because his name has again been linked with True Sky Sports, but with previous history, Mark, with deals falling apart at the last minute with Celtic. But Eddie Howe supposedly has set his mind on Celtic that he's not interested in Crystal Palace, that this deal is done and we can expect Eddie Howe. It's just when, do you know?
Well, you take a Crystal Palace job and then you're scrimping and scraping and all your aim is to stay in the Premier League. He's done that with Bournemouth. See, just
Exactly.
for me that would be like a sideward step. And again,
And the thing is, Mark, about these clubs down south, these bottom table scouts, they're looking to improve, but when they get rid of the managers then who kept them in these Premier Leagues for years, like so Hutchison, like keeping Crystal Palace in the Premier League is a great achievement on its own. But like don't be rushing to move up the table and a new manager comes in because the ship could sail, Mark.
but not even that. If things aren't going well, you're
Exactly.
3 or 4 months off the sack in every job in that bottom half of the English Premier League.
It's money talks down there now, Mark, ain't it? It's not about.
But at Crystal Palace, their sole aim is just to stay in that league for the
Mhm.
next season. And as I said, Eddie Howe's done that with Bournemouth. I'll be well paid for it, but again, where's the challenge in doing that? Why is he no? I never
Exactly, Mark.
thought he would have
And,
considered a job like Crystal Palace.
and it's true what you said. Like he's at this stage now in his career. It's a chance to him to move to a bigger level, Champions League football, win trophies, the project that Celtic have next season. Like this is a great opportunity, in my opinion, to become Celtic manager. You know.
It's a great opportunity for anybody coming into Celtic, you know. We
Mm-hmm.
said the other night in the podcast, for the CEO to the manager to new players.
Mm-hmm. And what's your thoughts on the Neil Lennon situation? That Neil Lennon had no input in. Can you like? Do you think that there's any truth to that, Mark? Do you think that Hammond was actually calling the shots here, and Lennon had no? And that's maybe he wasn't playing these players because maybe Lennon thought they weren't good enough.
I wasn't surprised. I thought he read that for Lee Naylor today, Paul, or yesterday, whenever it was this morning.
Hmm.
I think it's just what we've all known for long enough and we've spoke about it often enough. that it was Peter Lowe that was making the footballing decisions. And
Mhm.
I mean, Brendan Rodgers for me would have had a lot more input on that side of things than Neil Lennon was allowed.
And Lord got his yes man when he hired Lennon that he could actually take more control of transfers again when Lennon was appointed. Like you could actually see, yeah,
Yeah, because Brendan Rodgers would have had as much input as he could fight to get off of Peter Lowe. But I can't. Neil Lennon would, to me, he knew what was going to happen and he accepted it. So
happened
you can't.
his
Neil
first.
Lennon can't. See if Neil Lennon comes out now and came out with, I wasn't allowed to sign the players I wanted to sign and all that. To me, that's just sour grapes. Because he knew the situation he was getting in when he took.
Exactly, especially when he was there at the start of the tenure, he knew the way Peter Lawler operated,
Yeah,
and it was kind of nearly the exact same thing that Lawler was signing these players anyway back then as well, Mark, wasn't it? You
that
know.
that was the main problem. But back then, it was John Park and Peter Lowe. And John,
Mhm.
I mean, don't get us wrong. John Park found us a lot of good players. But
Mhm.
John Park left, Peter Lowe seemed to take on the John Park role as well as his own. So there was nobody, as I've said before, we all went on about Hammond coming up with players or Congerton coming up with players, but the ultimate decision lay with Lowe. He decided who we were signing.
Mhm.
Ivan Toney is a perfect example. We should
Exactly.
him, as I said, I think he was our backup if Edward had left. I think that's why Lowe pulled the plug on that deal. But apart from that, Liverpool for me, it was always looking at the money and how much money they could make in a 2 or 3 year time off the players rather than strengthening the squad. The
Do you,
team.
thi- do you think Edward's likely next move is going to be Leicester? It's supposed being the region of 20 million, 15 to 20 million. What Celtic are looking at realistically be 20 million, I think, with add-ons and stuff like that, Mark, that Leicester are preparing to bid, but supposedly contact has already been made by Leicester for Edward.
I think they've just tried to get their noses in front for any other team that's going to bid for them. I mean, we know Arsenal's interested in him to replace Lacazette, however you pronounce that.
Hmm.
So I don't know. It'll be a tough one because Arsenal aren't even get European football next season.
Hmm.
I mean, I would
Be
class.
hard to it. It's going to be hard for them now to attract players, and Edward
Uh,
wants to play.
I would class Arsenal as a bigger, better club than Leicester, but they're
Hmm.
just in a bit of a lull they now. But I think Arsenal will be back at the top end of the Premier League within the next couple of years. But there's a lot of problems behind the scenes at Arsenal just now as well. So
Yeah,
normally you would think that Arsenal would be a better pool than Leicester, but right now maybe not so much so.
it's amazing how a couple of years the tables turn, like Intel on clubs, isn't it? When the likes of Leicester could be outbidding Arsenal for a player, Mark, isn't it?
But
It's amazing, like.
But Leicester have done it right. They've set things up right behind the scene, whereas Arsenal's been a mess for even the last few years when Wenger was there.
Yes.
Wenger had total control of everything in the football side of things, and that was where one of the problems started.
Hmm.
Never really recovered from that.
That seems to be the issue, and it's the same with Celtic. Like we could say that about how Peter Lawler had total control of Celtic, really, Mark. Like that, when one man has total control of one club, everything could just come crumbling down. And we saw that as an example this season, Mark, didn't we? That when one
Look at
person.
look at Man United when Ferguson left.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, the Man United's never been at the same level as they were when Alex Ferguson left. No matter how much money they seem to throw at it, it never seems to just quite click. But they're a shambles behind the scenes as well.
Exactly. It just shows like that you need the right people in the right departments and have a proper structure, Mark, from top to bottom, don't you?
Well,
You know.
that's what Celtic should have been building for years.
Hmm.
Other,
Yeah.
other teams do it and they just seem to cruise by, whereas we go for so much of a high to bump rock bottom. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
There's other clubs that have maybe find themselves in a bit of trouble 1 or 2 years and they're back to the top again. But because we're in Scotland, we're always going to be like first or second. The way things are, we should be first, but that's another
Hmm.
argument. But
And what about What about being linked to past transfer targets, Mark? Like we're being linked again, like to James McCarthy, whose career now is finished with Crystal Palace.
People going about him being injury prone and that. He had a bad double leg break. That's the only poor injury he's had.
Hmm.
I put the stats up in the forum no that
Hmm.
long ago. Roughly, give or take, I think it was 3 or 4 games. He's missed the same amount of games as James Forrest has if McCarthy came back for his double leg break.
Hmm.
I think McCarthy would be a good signing for us.
Thinking that we don't have Scott Brown next season, like he'd be a good player to have around the dressing room as well, Mark. Like considering his experience at international level and being in the Premier League, his experience could be handy as well for the club. I think, you know.
If we were getting into next season and our central midfielders were McGregor, Turnbull, Sorrow, Ferguson and James McCarthy, I don't see anybody would moan about that.
Hmm. Hmm. So, well, that's all from our rumours and gossip. Of course, myself and Mark will do everything we can to keep you updated with some gossip and rumours. But as again, these are just rumours, and myself and Mark will discuss them. So now we're going to have Michael and Joonas join us. Uh, Joonas, as you know, lads, is a Dundee United supporter, and we've asked him back to the short night because the Scottish Football League is finished. We'll talk about Scottish football as a whole last season, the highs, the lows, and what the expectations are for Dundee for next season between their season ticket renewals.
Dundee United, stop calling
Uh,
it Dundee.
and I have that written down, Dundee United, like so, and I do like, and I wanted to make sure that I'm not saying it this time.
I think that's Mikey on there. Are you there, Mikey?
Right, lads, how are you getting on?
Aye, good.
Good man.
How's everybody in the chat and that, alright?
All right. Can you get Jonas on? Right, mind Paul Dundee United. Because
Yeah,
I've seen his Twitter.
I,
He's a big bit of a lad. You're no wanting to come looking for you.
I have Dundee United written down in red, so I can't miss it. Like so.
Think that's
Hello.
Jonas on. Hello, Jonas.
Hi lads,
Hi.
evening everybody.
Thanks very much for coming back on, Jonas.
Appreciate you having us back lads, cheers.
No
But you must be really kind of satisfied with Dundee United's performance in the league this season. Like, he finished ninth in the table. He won 10. He drew 14. He lost 14 points, 44. Was that the main target for you this season? Was survive the season back in the Premier League?
I think the remit probably was from the owners that after 4 years in the Championship and investing heavily, obviously safety was the priority. The style of football was pretty brutal, to be honest, and it would be job done as far as the management was concerned. I still personally think that we should have been aiming for top six with the sort of money that we pay out in the squad that we've got. But like I say, if the sole objective of the season was to survive, then they get a pass on that front, and that was the most important thing.
You see, your main issue seemed to be drawing a lot of games as well in this season. You know, you kind of like it was like Celtic. He failed to kind of kill off games in matches this season. You know, was that down to maybe a lack of experience back in the Premier League? Do you think? And should they learn from that next season?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of that. I think the draws was the big problem. I think probably what happened was we started off the season quite aggressive and a high pressing sort of style of football and attacking, but then we suffered two heavy defeats away to Rangers and away to Kilmarnock. It was 2 4-0 defeats back to back.
Then you went more defensive then and stuff like that, I think, was it?
Correct, yeah. I think what probably happened was he sort of put the handbrake on and sort of put the reins on it and just started sort of grinding things out. And the problem was as well, we never really found the system that suited Shankland and Clark, and then when Mark McNulty came in, we were trying to shoehorn 3 strikers into that formation. And it just
I'm playing players. You were playing players out of position for a lot of the season as well. I read as well, and that kind of wasn't bringing the best out of the likes of McNulty either. So it wasn't.
No, like you say, square pegs and round holes, and I think you boys have been a victim of that this season as well. So it was the same. It was the same and we didn't have enough width as well. Shanklin's not got the pace to be a sort of a create your own chances kind of striker, and we didn't really play by width, so we were never getting the service either. So he was a victim of circumstance and the formation as well and the style of play change. But
Michael, you've watched Dundee United a lot this season. Like, it's pretty impressive. Like that they avoided relegation this season, isn't it? Michael, you there?
Sorry, that's the total opposite of what Dundee United, the majority of Dundee United fans expected this year. With the money and outlay that's been put on the squad, the top 6 finish should have been the bare minimum for that team. Like I said, a lot of people would have thought because they just came up from the Championship, that's fine if they just stay up next year, but that certainly wouldn't have been the goal at the start of the year, especially not with the owners have got and the money they've put in.
Joonas, looking at Celtic's performance this season as an outsider, like we won 22, we drew. We won 22. We lost 5 and we drew 6 and 77 points. It's our lowest points tally in 21 years. Would you think this is one of the worst Celtic teams in a long time, Joonas?
Well, on paper it shouldn't have been. I mean, if as an outsider looking in, when you see the quality of players, well, the support on paper anyway, the quality of players, you would have expected them to have sort of, kicked on, but it's obviously stagnated. And I just think, like I say, there was obviously clearly problems early on behind the scenes and players not want to be there, and that just sort of, once the rot sort of sets in, it starts to spread. A couple of bad apples can ruin the sort of crop, as they say, So I think there was a rot that set in early and they never just quite recovered from it. And that's just, like I say, looking at it from an outsider's perspective,
Mark, what's your thoughts? Like, I know we talked you what we always talk about, but it's our worst points tally in 21 years. Like, it has been a relatively very bad season for us, hasn't it? Mark?
It's been atrocious, Paul. It's been the worst season for many a year anyway. I've never felt as bad. I don't think I've actually felt as bad for 3 wins in a row.
It's been one of the worst since John Barnes, but we still managed to win a League Cup in that era, So,
and I'm hoping we get the same kind of reaction as we had after the John Barnes debacle.
That's it. That's it.
We took a step up and got Martin O'Neill into, and we know how well that worked out. No, I mean, I hope it's the same kind of thing that happens this time.
Exactly, Mike. It's actually one of our worst performances in relatively nearly in our history, isn't it?
Yeah, like I say, back in the John Barnes year as well. If you want to go and just stuff that's maybe good for next season, and I remember Celtic splashing out nearly 6 million on Raphael Scheid. And then this year they splashed out 6 million on that Albion Ayeti. 2 absolute wasters. So hopefully that echoes itself and it's a good omen for next season when they get shifted out.
And Joonas, yourselves reaching the Scottish Cup semi-final, and look, I know you had disappointment, but again we have to talk about the referee and the linesman decision for the Hibernian second goal, when it was a blatant offside, and how they missed it when the linesman was in a straight line with the Hibs player is just ridiculous.
Yeah, and like I say, I'm not going to stand here and say that if that goal hadn't went and we would have went on to win the game, because I don't think we played to our potential that game. We certainly weren't as good as we were against Aberdeen the previous round. But like you said there, Paul, I mean, I think the manager was actually asked about VAR after the game and said, that's a waste of time for VAR. He says it was that embarrassing a decision. I mean,
yes.
He was a yard and a half offside and the linesman's right in line looking along the line. So, I mean, that's just incompetence. You don't need a video assistant referee to see that. I mean, they've got the hard neck to wear Specsavers as their arm sponsor as well. They'd maybe take a leaf out of Specsavers' book and maybe put a pair of glasses on some of these boys, because the decisions some of them come away with are absolutely bewildering, to say the least.
Exactly, but we talked about the referee standards within Scottish football, and we were mostly concentrating on Celtic and Rangers matches and things like. But we're seeing this, Mark, throughout Scottish football, and it just seems to be happening now more regularly, Mark, than anything, you know. Mistakes.
But it's about time they were calling them out, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
The mistakes have always been happening. It's just nobody. We've spoke about it before. We only really watch Celtic games. Well, I don't really watch many Rangers games, to be honest. But you watch enough highlights to know that there's bad decisions just been made throughout the game. There's the Aki's manager got I think it was a 4-game ban for his rant about referees the other month. The manager shouldn't be getting banned for speaking out against referees making mistakes. And we've spoken about there's no comeback to the referees for having a bad game. There's no comebacks for them making a blatant error. The whole system's just rotten.
And Michael, how do we go about improving this refereeing situation in Scotland? Are we expecting this to continue in Scottish football?
I don't think anything will be done. I think it'll just continue to be bad, and I think it'll progressively get worse. Like I've said in previous podcasts, when I go back to the early 2000s and late 90s, like it says with John Rowbottom and refs like that. I mean, if you compare they kind of refs to the refs we've got now, the decline is there to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
If people, I remember back in the day. I'm only 34, but the referees used to get penalties as well. But like I said, compared to the referees in this day and age, there's a big difference. They're very poor.
But is that down to the lack of training, Michael, that's provided from our? Are they just blatantly shocking at what they're doing? Like,
I mean, the training surely hasn't been changed much since then. Like I say, you've got, I don't know who's in charge of the referees or who does the training or that. Like that's maybe for somebody else to answer. But I just think that they've never got a chance. Like, why should you know? What I'm trying to say is, they're never held accountable for anything. So that's why they just forget. They just keep doing it. If a player gets sent off or a manager has an outburst of that, he gets sent off, he gets fined or that, whatever. What do the referees get?
Exactly. Like it's just a prime example there. Like what Mark said. Like when the Hamilton manager speaks out against him, and he gets a 4-game ban. Like, so if they're handing out bans like that, Michael, it's not going to change. That the referees seem to have the Scottish FA's backing.
Well, you see, don't the referees the way that the referee the game. They think that they're the main man in the game, eh? A good referee, you never see in a game. You never hear him.
Correct.
In Scotland, it's all about the referee, the way that they walk about the pitch. I mean, that guy, I can't even remember his name, that guy that we had against Rangers. The way that he was walking, if he had a shirt with a collar on it, he would have had it up like Eric Cantona, like, the way that he was swatted, like the way that he was like moving about the pitch and everything, like, he was the main show, like,
Exactly. And Jonas, do you think it's going to continue, or do you think the Scottish FA know these faults in the referee system in Scotland, or they're just blind to it?
I think there's a couple of things here, Paul. First of all, I don't think I'm not even sure if this is true. Like, I think there's very few professional referees. I think these are all part-time lads. I'm not sure if... I think the guys that get the Champions League games and the Europa League games are guys like Colum, Madden, Dallas, people like that. They may be full-time. But I think the vast majority of the referees are part-time. Now, one step to making it better would be to like make it full-time, so that's their full-time job. And also, like I say, have some sort of a committee or something like what Michael said, that where they're held accountable for decisions. They should all be brought in on a Monday and say, right, review the games that they refereed individually and say, right, this is the mistakes you made. Why did you give this decision, or what was your remit, and things like that. And they need to be educated on their decisions as well, because like you said, bad decisions just sort of pundits will kick off, managers will kick off, fans will kick off, and it gets talked about on Sports Scene for an hour on a Saturday night or whatever, and then it's swept under the carpet till the next weekend, and you just start the merry-go-round starts again, like, you know.
Just on referees and that, I just wanted to just nip in there and just ask Joonas what he thinks about, obviously supporting Dundee, being from Dundee, what he thinks of like 90% of the referees being for the West Coast.
But like the thing is, like, it's just, and regardless of like any Glasgow, just West Coast in general, there's a West Coast bias towards, like, you know, you feel like you get bad decisions. Like, we could play playing against Kilmarnock or Accies or anybody from that neck of the woods, and we'll get worse decisions against them because, like I say, the nucleus of the referees seem to be from that area. You know what I mean? And it's just like, well, there should be a bigger distribution of them around the country.
Yes, exactly,
as well.
Exactly.
And you shouldn't, if you had an allegiance to a football club, put it this way, right? If I became a referee after being a season ticket holder at Dundee United for over 20 years, I don't care what anybody says, I would still, even if I tried to be as impartial as I possibly could be, I would still make the odd subconscious decision in United's favour, because it's just human nature, eh? So it shouldn't be anything to do with, you should get someone that supports Dunfermline or something to referee Dundee United against Kilmarnock or Celtic against Aberdeen or something, you know what I mean?
Seen the West of Scotland, Joonas comes in and says, "Oh, I'm a Kilmarnock fan. But who's your big team?" Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It would start coming into, "Oh, well, which school did they go to?"
But Mark, am I right in saying like there's the Scottish FA have they only have like a group of referees? We say there's Beaton, there's Madden, there's Gollum, that they only get selected for Celtic and Rangers games, and other referees are overlooked, and they really never get a chance to ref a big Rangers and Celtic game.
Well, that boy that done the last one, was that no his?
That was his first game, and I think he only got that, Mark, because it was the end of the season, and you know, it'd be interesting. Are we going to see him ref a game again, or will it be back to?
Well, it's good.
The normal.
I think they look on it as if the kind of experience they've got. They think that the more experience they've got, the better referee they'll be for like the Celtic and Rangers games and things like that. But I totally agree with Joonas that far too many referees all come from like Lanarkshire and the West of Scotland, and that there should be more done to get people feel like Dundee, Aberdeen, up that kind of way, and more involved. I mean, there must be guys up there refereeing, so why are they not getting the chance to come into it's a pyramid.
Exactly.
I don't know how that works, but
that's what it seems to be, Mark, don't it? A pyramid scheme, don't it? That these lads are the elite referees, and
the ones below never seem to get up any further. Joonas is saying they all seem to be coming for the one bit rather than be spread about, and they don't. There's no. If you're a good referee and you've only been refereeing like championship matches, and you're doing well and you're getting big decisions right, you should move up a level and start getting involved in like the lower league Premier games, and then see if you're up to the bigger games. But
even feed them into the championship, Mark, like, you know.
Sorry, what was that, Mikey?
No, sorry, Mark, it was me. I was just saying that even feed them into like League 1, League 2, the championship, and then sort of develop them through the systems, you know what I mean? Don't I just say, because you're only going to get so and so games. How are you going to learn at a job or becoming better at it if you're not getting a chance to progress through the ranks, like, you know?
I mean, we spoke about it before as well. I think that referees throughout Europe should be UEFA that provide them for games. That would be the easiest way to deal with any accusations of bias or incompetence. Because if UEFA were monitoring the referees, half these mistakes, they would be noticed and they would be dealt with, rather than just see like what Joonas was saying there about, was it, I don't know if it was Joonas or Michael said about the referees getting dragged in on a Monday morning and looked through their games and that. I think that's a great idea. Maybe no right in the Monday morning, see like a Wednesday morning, and then tell clubs, if you've got any grievances with the referee, have them in by writing on a Wednesday morning, and we'll go through it with the referee, and we'll deal with what if we think he's made a mistake, we'll deal with that. But there's just nothing like that. You talk against referees, and right away you're up my charge off the SFA, and it's all wrong.
But like down in the Premier League, like, and I saw it a few times this season, and like that, if referees really did have a bad game or they made a blunder in the game, like, they won't ref the next weekend, Mark. I mean, like, it's being watched in other leagues. It just seems to be ignored by the Scottish FA up here. You know that they can basically get away what they want and what decisions they want to do, and there's no questions asked of them really. You know that seems to be the problem, that there's no questions asked of them. Why you sent this player off? Why did you give that red card? You know that seems
No, they're
what needs to be done.
basically bulletproof
Hmm.
because the referees never need to come out and explain themselves. It doesn't look as if they're explaining themselves to the SFA or the SPFL. They don't need to explain anything to managers unless you manage Rangers and he phones you up to apologise for mistakes and things like that.
Hmm. I think.
There's no punishment, just, I mean, I don't know, could you do like a referee's kind of league table or something like that? I don't mean us, the fans, I mean the SFA, and they take into account mistakes they've made and good calls that they have made and got right and kind of give them games according to that. Then it's more like performance based rather than just being based on your reputation and experience.
Hmm. Anybody else have any comments on referees before I move on, lads? Jonas,
Like,
Michael?
I would still went back to what I said on previous podcasts about I would love to see a rotation of referees from out the European leagues, refereeing different leagues. Like
Exactly, yeah. That when we spoke about that, like at least they're getting experience from different leagues, different football associations within. So like you're only going to learn really, Michael, by doing that, like, aren't you?
it's
You
not.
know?
I just see it as being a great system. I don't see any downfalls in that system in the European UEFA, that just having a referees union where they all referee all over Europe.
No, that happened. Remember when there was a strike by the referees here about equal pay or something like that, or they wanted more money, and they got foreign refs.
Luxembourg. They came in from Luxembourg, I think, weren't it? Luxembourg, I think, was it?
Yeah, and we had Aberdeen at home, and then there wasn't any really controversial decisions to talk about. I don't think there was anything much kicked up that weekend about refereeing decisions, like, you know.
Yeah.
And that goes to show you as well. Look how small Luxembourg is. And like you say, the level of refereeing during that weekend, like Jonas says, nothing. No decision worth talking about.
It basically comes down to the training development of referees within the Scottish FA, because they don't seem to be learning from these mistakes at all that they're making. It doesn't seem to be a new. It seems to be just the same decisions all the time that they're missing. Like the Dundee United and Hibs game. Like that linesman, Jonas, was in line. Like, do you know what I mean? And how he missed it. Like I just couldn't believe it. Like, you know, I just couldn't believe it. Like.
It's funny, just before we move on, Paul, sorry, just a quick one on that linesman. There's the same linesman that the following, I think it was the Wednesday, was in charge of the Wraith Rovers Dundee first leg playoff, and Wraith Rovers had a goal that was about 3 yards onside, disallowed for offside. So that linesman, within the space of 3-4 days, has made two horrendous decisions, and it was 1-0 at the time, and that denied Wraith an equaliser, and then they went on to lose the game 3-0, and that effectively ended their chances in the Championship playoffs. And it was the boy Alan Mulvaney, that was his name, the same boy in both those games within 4 days with two horrendous decisions, and yet nothing.
And you say they're sponsored by Specsavers, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah, but look, like you say, it's not like us, like
the ironies in the game, isn't it?
That's what I mean. Like, they're getting slated in that, but look at the potential windfall of money in that these guys are costing clubs by these decisions.
Exactly. Like, that cost Wraith Rovers a chance to get into
no disrespect to Dundee in that, because I'd actually prefer Dundee to come up for a simple reason. One, I get a Dundee derby to go to because it's local, and two, it's also another easy away game for me to go to, selfishly. But Wraith Rovers are a better team than Dundee. And if that goal had counted, I'd have put big money on Wraith over 2 legs going through against Dundee. So that goal totally killed Wraith in that playoff.
Exactly, Mark. It's not just affecting the game. Like, it's costing teams financial security as well. Like, isn't it? You know,
it's costing everybody. I mean, in a playoff game, in a cup semi-final. Even get back to the last derby game, can't mind who it was on the forum that dug into the rules, and Gregor shouldn't have been sent off according to this change in the rules. And yet, as I said at the time, I didn't want Celtic making a big song and dance because I don't think it would have made any difference whether McGregor was on the park or not as a result. But it's still back.
But if the rules are the rules, Mark, they should know the rules. Like, do you know what I mean? They should know the rules.
It's still a referee making a basic mistake, a big mistake, but through a basic rule that if it's only changed so whatever it was for this season or last season, that rule should still even be fresh in his mind.
A great example of that, Mark, is that situation with Callum McGregor was this Pickford's tackle and on Van Dijk, why Pickford couldn't get the red card because it was ruled offside, and that's why Pickford actually wasn't sent off.
Oh,
you know, and that's why he actually couldn't be, because the final decision was offside, and so VAR couldn't get involved in this really, because when they were looking at it, they saw that the decision was offside, and that had to be the final decision, and that's why no red card was given to Pickford then. You know.
I think Terence makes a good point as well in the chat, that maybe Joonas, or like he says that maybe the linesman that made the decisions is a Dundee fan.
I'm a Celtic Dundee fan.
Well, he's getting a champagne reception at hospitality at Den starting next season anyway, I can assure you of that.
Perfect. So I'm going to move on from referees. Look, we all agree we don't see no improvement in the near future, but we just have to wait and see. So, Joonas, I'm going to move on to when do you expect Mickey Mallon and the Dundee board to go about their chance of business? When do you think they should start, and what players would you like to see Dundee United sign?
Well, I would like to see the business conducted as early as possible, as probably most supporters, because we've an awful habit of sort of dragging out during the course of summer, and then what you're doing is you're getting boys in half fit 2 or 3 weeks, or you're getting them in a week before the season begins, half fit. Then they're having to try and play catch up with pre-season and things like that as well, and stuff like that. I mean, like I say, even like, I don't know if any of your young lads, like maybe even if Mikey Johnson wasn't going to be in the plans, we're crying out for wingers. I wouldn't mind getting him on loan for a season. You know, I think we're needing 2 attacking midfield, 2 wingers, an attacking midfielder, a striker, maybe a goalkeeper if we lose Benji, and a centre half. But the attacking mid and 2 wingers is crucial, because if we're going to play the way we did last year, there's not going to be any sort of like, you know, chance of scoring many goals again. That was our downfall. So creativity and width is what we're absolutely screaming out for, Paul.
And like, looking at Celtic, Joonas, from the outside, like there's this legal things now that we're hearing that is preventing Eddie Howe being named as Celtic manager, that suppose he mightn't be named until June. Are Celtic already kind of at a disadvantage, that having no manager in place now and having no realistic transfer targets under their belts? You know?
Well, if he's been told he's definitely getting the job, and say he was told of that 4 or 5 weeks ago, or however long ago it was, you would like to think that there's been a lot of hard work getting done on targets, and he's probably already sounded out some targets. I mean, these guys aren't daft. If they've been told they're getting the job and it's just the technicalities holding it up, then you'd like to think that there's work being carried out behind the scenes to do business, you know. So although it might be a slight disadvantage, if he's got a structure lined up behind the scenes and got people ready to come in, and you see a raft of signings as soon as he's appointed, then I don't see it being a huge problem if they can get it in and without it dragging on too long, like, you know.
Jude, Mark, we spoke about that, and Michael, I come to you as well, that we actually think there is work being done behind the scenes already, that it's not going to be done to the last minute, that Eddie Howe has maybe identified maybe if Richard Hughes is going to be director of football, that there's already been communication between Richard Hughes or what way he'll come in and do the job, you think, yeah?
We've said it enough before. Whoever the manager's going to be, it's already been decided, and I think we can safely guess that it's going to be Eddie Howe. And if it is, it's got to have been doing work behind the scenes. Whoever he's he'll have agents that he knows that he'll be used to working with and things like that as well. So even players will have been sounded out, I think, as well. If it's not, it's just so much short-sightedness on the part of the board. That's one of the reasons
But Michael,
that I'm hoping that. Do you get what I mean? I'm hoping that's what's been going on, and we're not still waiting on an actual agreement with somebody as such.
but Michael, going by that, like Celtic, as Jonas said there, that Dundee seem to have a habit of waiting, dragging out signings for the whole summer. But Celtic have a habit of doing that as well. And with such of the rebuild this season, like we can't afford to have transfer targets dragging out, can we?
Oh, if Celtic have stuff not been happening behind the scenes, then we're in serious trouble for next season. Because with the amount of work that he's done on that squad, and like that's worrying. I didn't even want to think like that. Like that's me. You thinking negative, but like surely, like you say, with the rebuild that's in place from top to bottom, there's got to be stuff going on behind the scene.
We can, as we said, that we can only have a look and wait. Jonas, on the last podcast, myself and Mark had a live chat show, and there was a few questions you asked us, but we asked them and we got our own fans' opinions. But I just want to ask you, what area do you think Celtic badly need to improve next season, and why? Just not the whole team, because we know the whole team needs to be rebuilt, but what area specifically?
Probably I would just say like the midfield. They need to get someone to control the game in the middle of the park, and then give it to sort of the attacking players. It was just a bit ragged any time I seemed to watch them. There was a bit of sort of, they were all too similar really. There was never didn't really have anybody there to get a
we don't have
behind.
We don't have a player that can really dedicate our style to play what way we want to play. There's no one there to pick out a pass or anything like that.
Did you see much of Sorrow, Jonas?
I saw him play when he played against us and stuff, and I saw him in a couple of games. And
you saw the goal, saw, did you? You saw the goal, saw.
Yeah, unfortunately. But no, like every time, like you say, any time I've seen him, he looked like probably the best midfielder there. And then I seen that he wasn't getting game time, and I was sitting there thinking to myself, there must be a good reason. But obviously, having listened to what you were saying previously, they were sort of giving Scott Brown game time as a sort of an old pals act. That should have been out the window a long time ago, in my opinion. You always play your best players. That seems to be, in my opinion, anyway. You know,
that seems to be like a trend this season, Jonas. Between at the start of the season when Lennon was there, he was playing. It seems he's playing the old reliables. You know, like likes of Christie, Brown, Encham, and that was basically our downfall this season. Was as you said, like playing Scott Brown for being his last season at the club, like, and not picking up best team, like having David Turnell, who got Young Player of the Year in Scotland, on the bench was just beyond me, like, you know.
Yeah, no, like you say, but you summed it up there, like the sort of old guard or the old tried and trusted old pals act. It doesn't work like it. If it's going stale and it's not working, you address it before the situation's too late. But they stuck with it too long, and that's what happened. You know what I mean?
That's what happens when you go into a league season with a team full of players that don't even want to beat the club. It shows in the performances, didn't it?
Mark, you want anything to say that? So
I've said everything about it. It's just the exact same as Jonas and Michael said there as well. It was just crazy, bizarre decisions that we paid the price for making them all season, didn't we?
But it did amazing, like that, how Jonas, like being a Dundee United fan, like saw this, like, you know, playing these players out of being the manager's favourites, or he had a better relationship with them, like, rather than picking the best team, like. And when the Neil Lennon and Kendi actually couldn't see it themselves, do you know? It was really bad management this season from everyone, really, that seemed to be a sort with the club this season, hasn't it, Mike?
Oh, like I say, just. Well, I mean, how big a club Celtic is, for this to actually happen in the way it has, is the most shocking part. For that to be allowed to happen from the very top. Like, Christie wants to leave, Edward wants to leave, and Cham wants to leave, Aya wants to leave. Playing Laxalt, who's been lambasted all season, which I totally agree with, his performance has been stinking. Played 99.9% of his career as a winger in Serie A, but's playing as a left back. John Joe Kenny coming in, couldn't get a game at Schalke. Schalke have got the worst defence in Bundesliga history. I mean, the decisions that have been made are ridiculous.
And to be honest, when we were on, like, it's not on our list, but I just wanted to ask you, like, that Celtic supporters around, when I say relatively, Mark, November, December, we were on the boards back to really get rid of Neil Lennon. And the board, like, blatantly refused, kept silent, and eventually it was too late. We got Neil Lennon. Have your managers ever come under fans' pressure to get removed, and have the board reacted to the fans by sacking the manager?
No, we had a similar problem in 2016 when we got relegated. And we got, like, our ex-chairman, and it was after the Hamilton game. It was a must-win game for us. We lost 3-0 at home, and then basically it meant that the following week Dundee beat us in the derby, and that put us down, and there was a protest outside the stadium against the chairman, and they needed to, like, smuggle him out the back door because there was a mob at the gates, basically. And like you say, they took far too long to act that season, and then we were in the wilderness for 4 years. So, I mean, it is quite concerning sometimes when, don't get us wrong, us fans talk a lot of nonsense some of the time as well, and do.
Yeah, but the fans
make
know
mistakes.
the club don't fall you on. You know what I mean? They can see it, like, you know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. Like this.
That's the point I'm making, Paul. I mean, sometimes we'll all talk about rubbish, but let's be realistic. We've seen that coming a mile off, and they couldn't. So that's what infuriates people more, because it's like we sit there in the stands and watch it every week. But how could you're watching the same thing? Are you seeing it through different eyes, or just is it a money thing? Or there's obviously things going on, but it frustrates the life out of all supporters. You know, I'm
looking at, Mark, maybe these chairmen who don't want to sack the man, it's like they're admitting they made the mistake by appointing this manager. Do you think that's maybe something to maybe take into consideration, that Lord didn't want to admit he made a mistake?
Well, I think that might be part of it, but it comes down to the fact it's cheaper to sack a manager than to sack 11 players. So it comes down to that. That's why we spoke about in the last podcast. It's the manager. No matter how bad it's going, it's the manager's job that's on the line. No matter what club you're, whether it's Celtic, Dundee United, Man United, it doesn't make any difference. If things aren't going well, it's the manager's neck that's on the chopping block.
Surely the board and that brass neck to, especially with the season that we were meant to have this season, to try and save face over that, like, just because they've got it wrong. They should have acted well before Christmas. And I still believe that if they actually got rid of Lennon before Christmas.
A chance.
Before Christmas, yeah, Mark, and got the right manager in and did the right got the right guys in early January, it would have been I'm telling you, there could have been a chance in that season.
I agree with Joonas, like, in saying, like we're on this podcast, like we're talking amongst fans, we're football fans. But, like, we saw this coming, not November. I think we saw this downfall was going to come when Neil Lennon was appointed straight away after Brendan Rodgers. Like, we talked about it, like, and Mark, you said as well, like, that it's not going to work out like that. The thing, but how it happened so quickly, and we the fans saw it, and that the board don't see it. Like, the fans know the club, and the board think the fans don't. That's my problem, you know.
Well, I never made any secret of the fact that I never wanted Neil Lennon back as manager, but I support him as manager. You know that yourself, Paul. I've never one for bad mouthing. Do you know what I mean? Jumping on the bandwagon and bad mouthing him or things that happened in that. But
no, but we saw, Mark, that. I'm saying, like, we saw the downfall. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
I said at the time when he got appointed, in the long run, this is going to be a major mistake. But I thought we'd enough. I thought we had good enough players, which I still think we did have good enough players. They just didn't do their job well. But I thought we had enough, like, momentum that would carry his own to the 10. But as you said, the downfall just happened so quick that even the people that didn't want Neil Lennon appointed didn't see that happening as quick as it did.
Well, you just need to look at the previous managers of Celtic. Tony Mowbray, Ronnie Dyler, Tommy Burns. They were all sacked for a lot less than what Lennon's done in that season.
Exactly. And considering what was on offer this season to previous seasons, Michael, how it wasn't acted on Neil Lennon is like we never know.
The money that he's been given to spend as well. Look at Tommy Burns. All the players that he brought in, Van Hooijdonk, Di Canio, Cadet, they were all free. He never had any money. No, what I mean, what they expected him to work wonders with their players. And like you said, Lennon spent millions on players, and look what he's done.
Like, moving on from that, I just want to bring this up again because myself and Mark talked about this in the episode 18 of the podcast. We spoke with Brian about this meeting with supporters, Michael, and I just wanted to bring it up with you because you weren't on that show. They came out of this meeting like frustrated or angry or whatever you want to put it. Like they weren't happy. Like, but it's going back to like this disconnect that the club have with the fans, that the fans have to come out like in this direction, that the board have given them no direction to where the club is going. Like they seem to have no plan, no 5-year plan for the club. They think, is that worrying that they have no plan, or do you think they're just belating, just being kept quiet? They're not letting the fans know what's going on behind the scenes.
34 years of watching Celtic, I've never seen such a divide between club and supporters as there is today, ever. That's saying something. And you just need to go back to something that happened the other day regarding the Green Brigade and the Palestine flags. That again just proved how far the fans and the club are away from each other in any form of relationship. The way that what they did that day.
Joonas, like, what way does are your board in contact with your fans regularly? Or I'm not saying regularly, but would they communicate with you at some stage during the season and stuff like that, the board?
Yeah, well, because obviously we had a horrendous relationship with our previous chairman. There's now the Dundee United Supporters Foundation, and there's a supporters liaison group that meets with like the sporting director every, like, I think it's quarterly, or it might even be every 2 months or something like that, and people from the club and the fans, like, you know, ask questions about the running of the club and the day-to-day business and if there's any transfer targets. So there's actually, and you can put questions to the board and things like that. And you know, they gave a presentation last month on the youth academy and how they wanted to go about certain areas. So no, there is a very good relationship now, a far better relationship than there has been. So that's one thing that the club is pulling in the right direction, is there's more engagement with the supporters.
Mark, that seems very interesting. They don't they have the yes, that with the Celtic we're talking about, yes.
But I don't mean this in any disrespect to Joonas or Dundee United, but Dundee United's a smaller club, so I think they can be. Do you get what I mean? They will be more. To me, they are more connected with their local community and their fans and things like that. Just because we are in a fan base is more local, that they don't make as much headlines as anything going wrong at Celtic and Rangers. So I think Dundee United would be a lot more open in the kind of forums than Celtic would be. I think Celtic, it would always be one eye on, we can't tell the fans that, or we don't want that getting out, or don't let the press get that. I think that would be more the Celtic way, any kind of that fan board connection.
But it would be a start though, Mark, wouldn't it?
A start, as long as it was going to be honest way. See if they were doing it and somebody came out and asked a question, see they didn't just waffle them with an answer, just tell them no, we can't discuss that. And that's that.
Yeah,
So, do you get what
I think that's the problem, Mark, is like there's never a clear yes or clear no with the Celtic board, so there's not, you know. No,
exactly. That's what I'm saying. I think Dundee, what Joonas is saying there, I think that sounds ideal for a club like Dundee United, because they're not going to sit there and worry about what's getting into the press over what somebody's saying in a Zoom call to a supporters group and things like that. Whereas Celtic always seems to have one eye on the image kind of thing and a kind of need to know basis. But I was surprised that Joonas says they talk about like possible transfer targets in that, because I've said that thing about fan representation on the board. I think fans expect the board to sit there and talk about who they would like to sign and things, and that's not really what happens at meetings.
When I've said that, Mark, what we'll say is the fans maybe raise concerns and say, look, we're weak in this area of the park, or have you got plans to strengthen? And you'll maybe have like one of the guys from like the recruitment department, or maybe one of like the scouting lads will say, well, we're looking to strengthen in this and this area. Like there'll not be any names or anything mentioned, because otherwise fans would just be right into group chats and on social media. We're going after this boy and that boy, but it's more just.
Sounds, as long as they've been open, it sounds like a really good thing.
That's it, Mark. Like it seems to be like that. The club and the fans are sharing the same view as like they need a right back, and the board are saying like, oh yeah, look, that's an area where we plan to strengthen in the next transfer window. So there seems to be a good communication there. But Michael,
in doing that as well, Dundee United are just showing how important they know that the fans are to the club, rather than Celtic fans have been treated the last few months.
I just wanted to ask something as well. Like, this is maybe a bit off topic, but
you're all right.
Close to when Celtic obviously had this thing with number 7s, about the iconic number at Celtic from Larsson, and it was just to ask maybe yourself in the chat, other than when Larsson left in 2004, I think it was, when was the last decent number 7 that we've had?
We haven't, and not that I can.
I've said that
before that number.
I've said that before on the forum, because even years ago, Kenny Dalglish was one. They said, but there's pictures of other shirt numbers on, and that all went back to the squad, like when it was 1 to 11 numbers, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I can remember 2 number 7s, obviously Jimmy Johnston and Larsson being the prominent number 2, than the 2 people. But there used to be that number only ever went to an iconic player in the squad.
I think it's like the jersey is given out to nowadays is the most recent signing. Mark, who
was our last number 7?
Nadia Chifche was number 7, so does that not sum it up?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, is it given out to any signing that we sign within the season? Like, just to, he's our new number 7, get the fans psyched up to it. Like, that.
Well, I think Mark, you should be. Gino as well.
Yeah, like what was it when Martial came to United? He wasn't your original number 11, and he was eventually given it then after a year or two. You have to prove yourself to get a Legends jersey. Really, maybe spend a year at the club and see how you're going, and then look, we'll give you the number 7 jersey.
Get Aya number 7 jersey and the captaincy to get him a new contract.
Do you think that was saying, Mark?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't even listen to me saying that.
like Michael, go by.
I'd love for Celtic to just come out and. I'm wanting players like Ferguson, Campbell for Motherwell, Doig for Hibs, McCann for St Johnstone. Like, they're all players for Scotland that should be bought anyway for the rebuild process. But I'd love for Celtic just to bring in some iconic, not even iconic, just like just some player to get the fans excited. And I'm not trying to disrespect Ferguson and players like that.
To show the fans, Michael, that we mean business next season in this.
Yeah, like bringing in Ferguson and players and that does show that. But Ferguson gets, as sad as it sounds, he gets me actually excited that if they were signing players like that, because I just see the promise in the guy. But I would love, I've not got any names off the top of my head, but just one main,
something a bit special to get.
Yeah, special, you need in the big games to goals. It's normally a striker or a winger, obviously, but just somebody to get the fans excited.
Harry Kane handed in a transfer request, lads. You heard it here first.
Lewis Ferguson.
Jesus Christ, we'll have to sell the club to sign Harry Kane. Levy will own the club now. Moving on, Michael, it was interesting to see what yours like that. Dundee United seem to have a plan for the whole club, as they spoke about their youth system to the fans. that seems to be an area like Celtic have just seemed to be gone off the walls. Is our youth academy?
There's clubs like Dundee United and Hamilton and that, even though that have got less facilities than Celtic, they've got the best youth systems in Scotland. Dundee United over the last 10, 20 years have proved, and along with maybe Hibs as well, have given out the best youngsters. Joonas will tell you some of the youth come
on average, Joonas, like how many players roughly would make the grade to the first team from your youth academy? Like, would you see a lot of them come through to the first team?
Well, this season we've given the most debuts to academy players in the whole of the SPL. I think it's like 7 or 8 have made their debuts. We've got a young centre half, a boy Kerr Smith, who's only 16. That Man United and Aston Villa are wanting to pay $500,000 for and stuff like that. The boy Archie Meekinson was watched by Southampton scouts this week against St Mirren and that. So the owners basically came in 2 years ago, pumped money into the academy and took us up to, we're now at elite status. So we're at like UEFA level elite for youth development now. So we've got one of the best academies in Britain, not just like we've got summer tournaments where we play against like top sides like, Man City's. We played against Man City and Liverpool's youth, Mönchengladbach's youth and that. So we've always put in big on that, and that's the way the owners are wanting to go, is a conveyor belt. So maybe get a guy to play, a couple of seasons and sell him for 2 or 3 million, which is money that keeps us
exactly
sustainable. You know what I mean?
But ain't it amazing, Mark, like how a club like Dundee United can get their house in order from the youth academy, and a big club like us and Celtic like just seem to fall apart within our youth academy, ain't this?
Dundee United, these weird. I keep saying weird clubs, Joonas.
Mark. I know exactly what you're getting at.
Their clubs, they need to do that. It was like, look at the players that Hamilton's produced over the years, Hibs have produced over the years, because they'll need to do that. They're Joonas saying, if we can bring somebody through for the academy and sell them for 2 or 3 million, that keeps them going. But the majority of that money will go back into the academy or running the club. Whereas if Celtic sell somebody for £20 million, we're expecting a £10 million replacement. Do you know what I mean? Dundee United, that's not the way they're going to survive. They're not going to progress doing that. If for a player, that's Maystate's getting back into making sure that like Ajax, Maystate's getting back into making sure the conveyor belt keeps running, and that's the way.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like that, they seem to have their house in order, like to make the club progress and survive by doing this. Like, well, do these then get the Celtics that we don't have a clear path even for our youth system to get into the first team?
Well, there's clear pathways for young players at Celtic. It seems to be just pure hit and miss. You can be lucky enough to get a breakthrough, and if you get it, you'll stay in the team, and if you don't, you'll be sold on in a couple of years' time. But Dundee United seem to be building on that, the basis, this is where our team's going to come from. Players, this is our plans for you. What we've spoke about, this is our plans for you. You'll be playing your first team in 2 or 3 years' time if you do what we're telling you and you apply yourself right. Whereas Celtic just don't seem to be telling players, because even players that they play well aren't getting game time. Montgomery get dropped the other night after playing well.
I think what Mark's saying as well, like, if youth can't get into Celtic's team this season, then they'll never will. Because, like I say, that's the worst Celtic team in years. And like that Montgomery and that played that game, started the game. What did he do to get dropped?
Exactly.
Other than have a good game.
But that seemed to be the same with Thornhill as well, getting subbed all the time. Michael wanted at the start when he was playing.
I mean, a blind man, Stevie Wonder, could see that Turnbull has been the best player this season. You know what I mean? But you're still getting subbed off every other, every game actually. You know what I mean?
Every game, yeah.
And the fact that Rogic and that's been something starting ahead of Turnbull that earlier in the season, that tells you everything. Like, I think he's the most unfit player I've ever seen in 34 years. Celtic, Rogic. I don't know a guy that can train that much but be that unfit.
Exactly. Like, it is a strange one. Like with Rogic, Mark, isn't it? Like how, like we spoke to Barry about, and Barry just said like it's just the way his body is structured into that he picks up these injuries, isn't it?
I don't
You know?
think he picks up many injuries. Like serious, we seems to be just like wee niggling injuries. He's never been fully fit. I've said it before. I read an article just after we signed him, and it was some Australian guy, and for the life of me I can't find it now. And he said that all Rogic would ever be was an exceptional or something like, was it foosball, whatever the
Futsal.
Aye, that's what he said. That was what this guy said that all Rogic would ever be. He says
Is that the football with that small ball? Is it the football? Is it with the small ball? Is it?
Futsal is just basically going to your local gym hall and playing five-a-sides. That's what it's basically like on a
Even
smaller
at that, he'll
pitch.
probably pick up an injury.
to be a big in Europe and Australia, it seems to be a big thing. They have leagues, and I think
It's huge in
Brazil.
it's huge in
It
Poland.
started in Brazil, but it's just started to branch out to everywhere now.
I mean, he smokes in that. It's just he's never really came across as any kind of professionalism.
You know, like I remember that goal he scored to confirm a treble in the season. Mind the goal he scored against Aberdeen. Everybody's like, oh, he's the way he ran past the players. One, he was no long on that game anyway, and two, it was Andy Considine that he ran past, and he's slower than a week in jail. so I mean, that's the only time I've seen him run past anybody like that. But I'd be able to run past him, and I'm nearly 16 stone and never played in 4 years. So.
But to me, he's kind of another Paddy McCourt, another non-named players that have had. I mean, technical, his ability, there's no question he's got technical ability, but he's just not got any like application or willingness about him to better himself, I don't think.
Moving from players and like all the scouting of players, like what way do your scouts work, Joonas? Do you scout the grassroots of Scotland looking for players, or do you move abroad, different leagues and stuff like that, or what way does your system go? Do you know?
Well, because of our sporting director used to run a football agency company, so he has contacts around the world. So we've signed Adrian Sporla from Atletico Banfield in Argentina. Rondo Fuchs was Deportivo Alaves in Spain via like Sochaux in France. Mellon said a couple of weeks ago, and like our manager said, that we'd been looking at targets from Ukraine, also the Scottish lower leagues. We'd been looking down south. We'd been looking in Africa, you know, all around the world. So we've branched out. So we have got quite a sort of multicultural sort of scouting system on the go now. Like, you know,
they really seem to have their house in order, don't they? Dundee United, don't they? They really seem to have good departments and good people in these departments, don't they? Like what we were talking there, like at the start of the podcast, that Celtic need to have a proper structure and stuff like that. But looking at Dundee, like coming up to the Premier League, Dundee United come back up to the Premier League, like they seem to have their house in order, don't they? Like they learn from, obviously, Joonas said they had their past mistakes on the previous chairmen and stuff like that, but they seem to have learned from their mistakes, is what I'm getting at.
Well, definitely for what Joonas is saying, they seem to be doing really well in all fronts. Really, business side of things, the scouting side, fan engagement, the club's progressing well. Dundee United's a big club, Paul.
Yeah, you were saying that to me in the last podcast, yes.
You're on Ireland and that, but I mean, Dundee United's a big club in Scotland, and they've had a lot of success, they've had a lot of bad teams over the years as well. But I can remember when Jimmy was our manager and that, a good team.
Back then, Mark, that was when they had Davy Derry. He's one of the best centre backs in Europe at the time.
Definitely. I went to school with a guy, and as I've spoken before, one of your teachers at school, he was a Dundee United scout, and then Paul Hartley's assistant.
He ran the youth setup at United for a while as well.
Yeah, he was a scout back in the early 2000s. Yeah, he was a scout at United back in the early 2000s.
He was a teacher at my school, Holy Cross in Hamilton, years ago, and one of my best pals at school, Pat Clark, went to play for United, and I don't know what went wrong. I think he had a bit of a float with Ivan Golak, and he let him go, and he just fell out of the game. But I mean, Dundee United is a big club, Paul, and they deserve to be pushing for cups and that in Scotland, definitely. And
I'm not saying Dundee United aren't a big club at all.
No, it's
I'm just very impressed. Like that.
You're on Ireland. I mean, in Paul.
Yeah, I'm just.
They know that.
I'm just so impressed. Like how Dundee United have their whole departments in order, and how Celtic winning all these titles. I don't have nothing. Do you know what I mean?
What Jonas is saying, they've got their ducks in a row and they're been run well for the first time
And Jonas,
in Celtic.
what was it like under? Sorry, Matt, go on.
No, just saying, compared to Celtic, it's chalk and cheese, really, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And what was it like under the previous ownership, Jonas? What happened there? Like, did he sell, or were you in financial trouble with him, or?
Yeah, well, what happened was we had Eddie Thompson, who was in charge, and then when he passed away, his son took over, but he was just interested in recouping his dad's money. So what sticks in our craw with a lot of United fans was the season when we sold Armstrong and Mackay-Steven to you lads in January. We were sitting like second in the league, pushing for 2 cups and stuff, and we were doing well. And then the wheels just collapsed, and we finished 5th and everything. I think we lost to use in the League Cup final and stuff like that as well. But that completely killed us. And then he just sort of sold the family silver, as it were, and then it was just a downward spiral from there. He was just scrimping and saving and pocketing every trouser and every single penny he could. He was in the papers talking about wanting to go to Newcastle Jets and taking over clubs in Australia while he was bleeding us dry and things like that. And it was just an absolute disgrace. And obviously he oversaw us going down to the Championship, and he only resigned about, I think it was halfway into the second season. Us being in the Championship, it took so long for us to sort of get him out, but the damage was well
done.
Truly
Yeah,
done.
it was done. Like, yeah,
Dad was good for you, was he? No, Jonas.
Yeah, I know. Like, see, his old man, right? To an extent, he was right, and but the problem was his dad was spending like fantasy football money. You know, he was throwing mental money. I mean, we paid $750,000 for Stevie Crawford and $500,000 for boys like Lee Miller, and we did overspend under his tenure, his dad's tenure. But he was a fan. He ran it like a fan. He wasn't probably as clued up as he should have been. And then his daughter was due to take it over, but she lost her husband in a motorcycle accident, and that basically derailed that. And then it turned out his son came in, and he was only interested in trouser and everything that his dad had sort of put in.
Much back as he could.
We were just bringing in. We were bumming about the European leagues for cheap free agents and everything, and mercenaries. And
that's the time you taught me that, when you had all these foreign players inside there, and they basically weren't good enough, or they just didn't care. I remember you saying that in the last podcast was that you had so many different foreigners inside your team at that time when you got relegated, weren't they?
And the thing is, as well, it doesn't even matter. Like, it doesn't really matter where the lads are from. We could have 11 different nationalities in the starting lineup. You wouldn't care if they were good players, but it was journeymen that hadn't, guys that were like Cinema Pongal and boys that were in their late 30s hadn't played for. There was guys that hadn't played for 2 years, and they came in January, and it took them 3 months to get fit, and then they were always injured, and we were paying their hotel fees, and we were giving them £5,000-6,000 a week, and it was just a disaster from top to bottom. Like, yeah, I could go on all day about how bad it was back then, you know.
That's back with Thompson as well, Stephen Thompson. There was always a puff piece in the paper someplace regarding his personal relationships as well, and cheating on his missus and everything. There's also the most ironic thing is back when Mark Wilson signed for Celtic, it was myself and my dad that was doing the central heating system in his house, and that was when he told me that when 2 weeks before Mark Wilson had signed for Celtic, I'd already knew that he'd signed for Celtic and knew what the fee was.
Jesus, and it's like I said to Mark, like that. It's really impressive, like how Dundee United have their whole structure within the club, like and how a state we could say that we're in at the moment from board level down, isn't it?
Well, United, like I said before, United have been bought over by Americans, and Americans are stupid. They know how to run a business. It's all about profit and money. I mean, these guys have run companies for years. They run a company differently to like the way Law and that did.
Go by. Sorry, Michael. Like, you want to go by just American owners? Like, there's been a lot of things down south like that. The American owners are only there for profit. That they think like. But what's the relationship there with the American owners and Dundee United? Like, do they show that they appreciate the club and that they want the club to progress?
Well, I've met both the owner and his son, because his son stands with, when he's over from America, obviously because of COVID, he's not been over since last year, but he actually stands with the fans. And like you can see, he's got the bug. It's the same with his dad. Like, you know, we had a function and stuff, and his dad was there, and he was having a pint with the fans and things, you know. And the boy was properly, you ken that he'd actually got the sort of like the bug, if you know what I mean. He was talking as a fan as well. He says I've just been sucked into it. So he's a supporter as much as he is the owner as well. Like, you know what I mean. So he's got sort of enveloped in amongst the sort of canvas of the actual club, in the sense that, like, you know, after meeting the fans and speaking to the lads and seeing what it means to people, because in one of his first interviews, he said in America everything's run as a franchise, but he says, see in Scotland, he says, a football club, someone's like, an old man said to him on his first day, he goes, listen son, you could go to Tesco, like if Tesco's gets demolished, I can go to Asda's, but he says, if my football club ceases to exist, then I can't go anywhere else. And I think he bought into that sort of right from the start, and how much a club actually means to people. So he is engaged with the fans, which is it's refreshing compared to the charlatans we've had in the past, like, you know.
And that it's such a good story, Mark, isn't it, to hear like how they learn from their past mistakes, and they got new owners, and to hear the owners' stories with the fans, like it, and showing how disconnect our board is with our fans. Like it's just amazing into how Celtic have come disconnect with the fans, isn't it? You know.
I don't think you'll ever really get the Celtic board members standing and getting a pint with Celtic fans.
No, I'm saying that, yeah, like, but like it's just like the difference, like that, how no statements or things have been coming, how so quiet the board after the fans, like, you know, that's what I'm kind of getting at, you know.
Again, I'm saying it, these wee clubs and that, but that's their community. They can do that without the same kind of pressure of everything that gets said and reported. It's magnified by 100,000,000%. But that's great to hear again what Joonas is saying about the guys, the owner's son, and even the owner sitting. That's what it should be like in these smaller clubs. That's how you build the community spirit, get more people involved.
Yeah.
Well, as Joonas is saying, everything seems to be just, they're doing a great job.
How they learn from past mistakes, Mark, like that, they don't seem to be repeating the same mistakes, like is a step in the right direction. We hope that with Dominic McKay that we actually move on from our previous mistakes and transfer, signing the cheap options and stuff like that, like, you know.
Well, I think it was Mikey that said they're Americans and they know how to run a company. They'll be paying the right people to make the right decisions, and that's just all we can hope for at Celtic.
Exactly, Celtic, that we bring in the right people for the right department. Like, you notice it came up there on the live chat, like, how would you feel about Dundee and Dundee United building a new stadium and the two teams sharing it? Has there ever been any talk of anything like that?
There has been sort of talk about it for like running costs and stuff like that, but I think as far as the supporters are sort of concerned, there's too much sort of history attached to like your home. You know, that would rob that away from a lot of people, and people have banged the drum about, like, you know, cost saving and a multi-facility. I mean, Dundee have got American owners as well, and they're actually in the process of, you know, trying to get a new stadium kicked off, which is fine. But like I say, I think the 90% of United supporters, we've beat Mönchengladbach at Tannadice, we beat Barcelona at Tannadice. Like, those kind of memories belong to you and your club.
Do you know how far apart the stadiums are, Paul?
Oh, I did. I saw it. They're just right across the road. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, right across.
Right across the street, and that's you.
You know, I'd love to see it on a derby day. To be honest, like I said, it's just brilliant. Like, but it's good what you said. Like, and like how different fans, like in the pitch. You were saying, like, during the game, like your rivals, but after you can go to your local and have a pint with the Dundee fans. It's just.
It's a different kettle of fish for us boys up here, like, you know. And everything that Mark said, by the way, about like what he was saying, that like the Celtic directors, I totally get everything he said, because I understand how different it is. Like, yous are a global brand, yous have got millions of fans around the world. We're supported worldwide as well, but nowhere near on as big a scale. And there's certainly not going to be, if your chairman was out having a pint with some local punters, that would be slapped on every single paper and up and down the length and the breadth of the country. The fact our chairman was having a pint didn't even make the local papers. So, it's magnified so much differently and stuff like that. And I totally agree with what you're saying. And it's the same when it comes to the support as well. Like, yeah, okay, you'll hurl abuse at each other for 90 minutes, but you can still be pals, you know what I mean?
There'll be those wee drunken idiots having a scrap in the street at 10
Oh,
o'clock.
yeah, you'll get a few of that, Mark. Aye, that's it.
That happened. Derby.
There was orange smoke I saw during the semi-final match in Dundee. So you do kind of celebrate your flares and stuff as well, Joonas, don't you?
Yeah, well, like we've got like a sort of display team, and that sort of came about, and we did a bus send off, and the lot across the road had a right good laugh at our expense, being like, "Oh, imagine doing this for a semi-final and all this kind of stuff." But I think what magnifies it as well, people forget we've not been to see our team for nearly 14 months.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So the chance to come and wave some flags and let some smoke off, let the kids see the team, and even that, it was good for me just seeing boys that I go to the games that I've not seen in months. You know, it's a social thing as well. It's not just standing there letting off flares, but also every single one of the players said that inspired us to win, and we beat Aberdeen 3-0 and got to the semi-final. So it had an effect, you know. So it's engagement, you know.
And Michael, this year, there's so many Celtic players being in the last year of their contracts. Do we need to sell them immediately when the transfer window opens, so the new manager can come in and just start fresh straight away? Do you think, Michael?
Sorry.
You there?
Sorry. I think everybody that's in the last year of their contract want away anyway.
Mm-hmm.
No brainer to just move them on. Any player, if it's Eddie Howe or whoever it is that comes in, any player that doesn't want to be at the club, get them moved on. It's as simple. People say it's sometimes not that simple. It is, because there's always somebody wanting somebody, no matter how bad they are.
Mm-hmm.
We just need to look at some of the players that we've signed in the past, like Colin Kazan-Richards that we've talked about in the past. Even how bad he was, he still ended up at us. So like that, Jetty, Christie,
Derby, isn't he? Derby under Rooney, isn't he?
Yeah, they nearly got relegated. Know what I mean? So there you go.
They should have been relegated.
They were lucky.
God, they've pulled some strokes with financial fair play.
Ah, yes, they have, yeah, but they could get deducted points still. They're still not.
I think for what I've last spoke to Ed 1 and 2 about, I think they're trying to get it so the points deduction starts next season.
Aha.
To get championship. I think that's their kind of. I think that they're admitting they're wrong, but they're not going to take the blame for it. They know well it could affect this season.
Mm-hmm. And Joonas, what about yourselves? Like, have you ever had a situation where the player's in his last year of his contract and he wants to leave, and did the club sell him immediately, or did you try to do what Celtic did and hang on to him for another season?
I think we're quite clear with. I mean, when we've sold boys like going back to David Goodwillie, Johnny Russell, Armstrong, all these boys sort of, as a sort of gesture of gratitude to United, they sort of like maybe extended their contracts by a year so that we would get a better fee in that for them, you know. So we've never really had too many. The biggest probably contract rebel situation we had that I can think it was probably when Scott Allen, he'd played like 4 or 5 appearances, and then he said he'd refused to sign a new contract unless he was becoming the highest paid player at the club, and then he ended up leaving for West Brom for $500,000 in January.
Yeah, West Brom, because
he's but people say that it was all him, but there was rumour that he fell out with people behind the scenes, and his agent was stirring the pot, and the manager at the time didn't see eye to eye. So that story's grown arms and legs over the years, but that's the only time I can remember really. And the club they did ship him out pretty quick, so we don't seem to have too much of a tolerance to these sort of lads that try and throw their weight about. It's either you get shipped out if your attitude stinks, especially if you're a young boy that the club has spent 11 years on nurturing, and then you throw the rattle out the pram as soon as you've had 5 games, you know.
He's another player like that, never grew to his potential. Joonas, isn't he? Scott Allen, isn't he? He's never kind of. There was always talk to him when he signed for Celtic that he was going to be the next big player, but he never kind of progressed in his career. So he didn't, Scott Allen.
No, it was just an attitude thing. I think he's always had the talent, but I think it's probably just an attitude problem that he's had.
Yeah,
that happens
going what you're
people.
saying there. No, yeah, exactly. And it seems to happen to a lot of players, young players now these days, don't it? Where money, Mark, kind of turns their head, don't it? You know, it happens that seems to be a big issue with young players now. Is they're more interested in the money rather than staying with the likes of Celtic.
They're more interested in the money and being able to afford a fancy motor and having the right clothes and a bit of gold hanging off their wrist and the
Hmm Was it?
social media and that. That's what young players are.
Was it?
So they're more about image now than actually on the park. Look at Paul Pogba.
Hmm
I mean,
hmm
Paul Pogba's, to me, he does it talent in the world when he was a young player. He fought with Ferguson when he was a young man at Man United, and he's never became the player that he should have been. And yet he's on £250,000 a week or something like that. For
I
and
think
hmm
near worth that. No player's worth that money in my opinion. But even in today's market, Paul Pogba's never became the player that he should have been. But he's got the image, and he reminds me of the kind of Balotelli. He was always in the headlines and always making headlines, but never actually done it much on the park. And that's just
hmm
how young players look at it now. They're just trying to make as much money as they can.
I think what I was
Mike,
saying
should there be a cap, Michael? Should there be a cap? Sorry, should there be a cap on young players across European football that they can only earn a certain amount? Or
I think that ship sailed a long time ago. I think it would be
Mhm.
impossible to bring
Yeah.
something up.
especially agents now, ain't there? Super agents and stuff like that, as they call themselves.
That Billy
You know?
Gilmore and that signed for the new club is on like 40, 50 grand a week. He's only just broken to the Chelsea first team. How are you meant to compete with that? You can't. Well, it's impossible to keep. And how many players actually want to play for the club or play for the badge? You got all these guys that are kissing the badge after one game and everything, and that. But
Exactly.
as soon as they get a sniff at a bigger wage elsewhere, that's them. They'll just drop trowel and off they go. Know what I mean?
Yeah,
I mean, unless you actually get a player that like a chat, like another player that I would love to come in and would be a great addition to the squad is that James McLean at Stoke. I don't care what anybody says, and I've seen him that many times.
He's a
getting
fighter,
older now.
Mike,
I tell you one,
he's a fighter.
That guy, like yeah.
Yes, and that's what we lacked this season was a fighter.
And the Scott Brown and that leaving and that, and it's all like bringing in guys like Ferguson, who I think can be in the bring mould regarding attitude and stuff. But they're going to need to replace that figure in the dressing room.
Mark, I think.
Look
Sorry,
at
Mark,
Johnny Hayes. I don't understand why we get rid of Johnny Hayes.
Yeah.
He wasn't the best player we had. That knew.
Well, he fought, Mark, didn't he?
That's what we were missing. We spoke about it before about who our captain would be and how we don't need a captain really. We need leaders over the park. Johnny Hayes was that type of player. James McLean would be that type of player. James McCarthy would be that type of player. It's as long as it's not going to cost us mega money. I don't see anything wrong with bringing in the players in as part of the squad.
But I think, Mark, the days of the likes of Scott Brown spending 14 years of Celtic, like after James Forrest and maybe Callum McGregor, like, it's going to be a long time that we see a Celtic player staying at the club for so long, I think. You know, I think that the modern player now, Max, will stay at the club for 3-4 years, I think, you know?
That's just modern. That's just modern football. You'll struggle
Like, it's like
Forest and
yeah, as like Michael said, they're like that. 1 week they're kissing the badge, and the next week they're gone. Do you know?
Like he says, I just think it's not just getting players to stay for 3 and 4 years. Getting players that are good enough to stay that long over the longevity of their careers. Because a lot of people are good for 2 or 3 seasons, and they're just not the same player, and it's time to move on.
But is it like? Sorry, Michael, go on.
It's just hard to get a player that's consistent for that long.
But
Scott Brown and that, like he says, you didn't get many players like that over 10 years or whatever it was that can perform like that week in, week out. That's a rare breed, that.
But Mark, like, who's it down to? Like, is it down to the bad management from the board, or is it the agent pushing for a bigger fee for his player and maybe a better payoff for the agent, or is it the player themselves, or is it a mix of all three that the players have gone down to the last year of their contract?
It's a mix of all three. As we said before,
you spoke about like that.
It was bad.
The last contract, yes.
Players were coming into the last year of their contract at the same time, but we all applauded Peter Lawwell for keeping them, so we can't fault him over that. But it was a bit of bad planning, and players that if they were going to spit the dummy out, they should have forced their move maybe a bit better. But a lot of them only request a transfer because it'll cost them money.
Mhm.
You've got to take that in. But agents, it's just if your player's moving, you're making money. If your player
But Mark, roughly, like, how much would it have cost us, roughly, do you think, to sign Fletcher Foster at the time when he wanted, like, basically he wanted to secure his future because he's 34, 33, 34. He didn't want to be out on loan again, and he wanted a permanent move. That's what we heard at the start of the season. Like, roughly what was Celtic being expected or Southampton would have wanted for him.
to be honest, I couldn't really guess, Paul, but there was Celtic just wanted Fraser Foster to come back up, and he'd agreed today. He told Peter Lawwell and he told Neil Lennon he would come back up. So Celtic were willing to take him on loan, which would have helped him financially, because Southampton was still paying
Exactly.
another year his wages, or they were willing to try and come to an agreement with Southampton for a permanent transfer.
Something happened when he went back down to Southampton at the end of the season, wasn't it?
Fraser Foster that just said no. It was him that turned it down after telling Lennon and Lowell that he would come back up. So
That's true.
Celtic were willing to go through the loan route to help him out with the money side of it, with the wages, or were willing to come to an agreement with Southampton for a full transfer fee, and it was Fraser Foster that pulled the plug on it.
What I find strange as well in this day and age, and Mark or you want to now you Paul can enlighten me, why would a player employ an agent in this day and age with all the money? I mean, maybe it's just me, or maybe it's just the greedy side of me, but I'd want every single pound to myself. And with the fees that the agents get to make the transfer, how would you not just negotiate that yourself? I just don't understand this agency thing. I mean, it's just me. I just want to negotiate it myself, and then other money's mine.
I would love to get Ed 2 on the podcast to get into all of this, because Ed 2 knows, see that the big agent, Viola.
Yeah, Mino Raiola.
Personal friends with him and everything. Honestly, I'd love to get Ed 2 on to talk about this, because it is some of the stuff he tells us on our wee private chat room thing about what agents are demanding for players to move, and that is unbelievable. Honestly, the money in that, and even down to what family members are demanding. Things, crazy money.
It's like Messi's father's his agent, Mark, isn't he? Messi's father, isn't he? Is he involved with Messi's contract negotiations, his father?
I think he is.
Yeah.
I can understand that to a degree. Like your dad or your brother or that.
That's
being your agent.
to be honest, I'd have been happy. Well, that was ever great a player, but I'd have been quite happy to trust that my dad was looking after, that I wasn't getting mugged off. And see, if you're getting employing an agent, it should be to try and get you like your boot deals, your kit deals and things like that, rather than trying to hawk you about, trying to make money out of transfer fees and signing on fees and the percentages of what you get in that.
I think I think some of these agents as well, I'm not talking about the top end agents, but you'll see some players in their careers, right, and they've been at 17, 18 different clubs, and it's like the Harlem Globetrotters. They've been all over Europe, they've been in Africa, they've been in South America, they've been in Eastern Europe, and you're thinking, are these guys just getting one season at a club because the agent is dropping his knickers to every Tom, Dick and Harry that's waving a wad of cash in his face? Is this boy wanting to be passed from pillar to post, you know?
They're looking at their players, they don't even look on those players, they look at them like clients. Are they looking at their client's career? Is it good for them to move there, or is it just, that's another 20 grand in my pocket this year?
So look at Robbie Keane. Robbie Keane was a multi-millionaire loan because of all these sign-on fees he signed for signing on to these clubs that he played with. He got a sign-on fee, like, so. Your agent's going to discuss all those things for you, like, do you know?
My favourite quote here, Robbie Keane back in the day was when he signed for LA Galaxy, and he says it was always a dream to play for that club. I was thinking to myself, I felt like the only thing he thought about LA Galaxy was a chocolate bar. You know what I mean? He's telling the fans it was a dream to go to America and sign for them all his life and everything. Every club that he signed for, he said the exact same crap all the time.
Yeah, that's what players do, Mark, don't they? I love this.
A few like that. I think there's been a few players over the years that have all come out with, it's the only club I've wanted to play for and that.
It's the only person, and I actually spoke to when I was out doing my work today, one of the managers in the shop, he's a huge Leeds United fan, Mark. We were discussing the last contract about Brazzelli, is it the manager, is he? The Leeds
Bielsa, yeah.
We were talking about him, Mark, that he discusses his own contract and pays his staff out of that package. Remember we were discussing that?
Uh-huh.
So I asked him about that, was it true? And he said, yeah, that what he No, I asked him. But it's not only does he do that, right? He sends money over to his first club in Argentina every year. He sends over about £1 million to them every year so they can buy players for his first team. Like, this is just a local team now and thing. He built them a brand new stadium 2 years ago for $2 million, he said. You know, that's a player who is not interested in the financial side of football, who never was. He just loves the game.
That's why Marcelo Bielsa is the kind of manager that I'll never, ever, ever be at Celtic, because he's got full control over everything.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that happens to that club, from the tea lady right to anything, he's in control. And that's how he would never ever be at Celtic. Because I've seen a few people on the forum say, "Oh, Eddie Howe, they didn't want Eddie Howe or that." I'd love for anybody to tell me in this current climate on who's available, who's a better manager to come in at Celtic than Eddie Howe.
I don't think there is, Mark, is there?
Goku.
Nah.
He's won Dutch league titles.
I don't know, not for me. Maybe it's because I can understand him as a player. Like, he's the most overrated player ever in the Dutch setup.
Jonas, we have a regular guest on the show, Barry, who played for Dundee United, but
Dundee, but played for.
All right.
Oh, you're going the other way, like, yeah. You're going. This has been promoted all over Facebook. But the point I'm getting at, Mark, like that,
different teams.
He was another person who didn't see the financial side of the game. He just wanted to play football, and that was his main goal, was to play football. And when I tell you, like, that type of player is gone. It's just money now. The young player now could just move down south, and he'd be quite happy to sit in the bench and get 30 to 40 grand. Do you know?
Look at Farouz. Look at Farouz at his ways.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't even think he's with a club anymore, is he?
No, he sells
clothes or hats or something. Yeah.
He's what?
That's not even a joke. He sells designer hats.
Designer hats?
Yeah, caps. Like, that's what he sells.
God.
I thought you were saying he plays for Hearts.
That Kelty Hearts.
That's God honest truth. Yeah, he sells hats.
What, like Bellboy doing the market?
Yeah. It's long lines of that, yeah.
So moving on from transfer targets and stuff like that, and it's actually quite a thing that we spoke about Fraser Foster, because our next topic is Benjamin Seegers. Jonas, have you heard any more links to the Seegers with Celtic, or what's his situation at Dundee United?
I've not heard any links to you lads since like the last sort of speculation. I did hear some Ipswich fan on a forum on Twitter came out and said, "Oh, he's available for 400,000."
400,000, yeah.
Which is utter But the thing is, how would some Ipswich fan on a fans forum know what he was worth? I think
story came. I saw it on Twitter, but didn't read into it much. When it came, that's how it shows how these stories grow and social.
But you'll find a lot of local paper journalists, and they've been guilty of it up here as well. Like the local paper, they'll see something that someone tweets, and then they'll try and pass it off as a story in the paper, like as if it's a bit of transfer speculation. And that's what I said. A few boys were up in arms about it. I said, "Listen, lads, how is some lad from Ipswich that's just bashed out something on his computer got an idea what we value our one of our prized assets?" I says, it smacks of the typical English like sort of mentality. And bear in mind, Ipswich, I'm not even sure if Ipswich have been promoted out of League One or if they're in the Championship next year or whatever. I mean, it just smacks of the typical arrogance down there that they can just wave a derisory offer in the face of a Scottish.
Because I actually found that very, very cheap. The way yourself and Michael were talking about, I would think he'd be worth more than that, maybe 1 million or something like that. Obviously, you know. Yeah,
well, like I say, they think they just wave a derisory offer in the face of a Scottish club and they'll just bow down to it, you know. And like I say, I personally, for what I think he's worth and the situation that the club's in, because obviously with the pandemic and no income, I would like to see him go for nearer £1 million, if I'm being honest with you. And that's not me trying to be greedy or saying that he's worth more than what he is, but for he's made 131 saves in the league this season, which is something like the next goalkeeper after him was 96 saves or something.
Which is good. He's probably I hadn't really seen much of him to be spoken about before, and I've watched some YouTube videos in that Dundee United games, and he's probably been as important to Dundee United as McGregor has been to Rangers this year.
Well, Shanklin got us promoted last season, and Siegrist has kept us up this year with his saves. Like the number, he's easily won us probably 5 or 6 games that we've scraped out of an odd goal victory where he's made. We got a point at Hibs away, and he made 8 saves in that game, the most recorded by any goalkeeper in this league season, and we scored the 97th minute equaliser. So if it wasn't for his saves, we would have took nothing from that game. So there's another point in the bag if it wasn't for his contribution, we wouldn't have had.
97th minute, I checked which school the ref went to with that one.
Oh, to me, honestly, I went to the toilet. I missed the goal. I was in the toilet, come running through, bouncing about my living room.
And Michael, you rate him highly, Siegrist, don't you? You like to see Celtic sign maybe as a backup because he's obviously better than what we have at the moment, you know.
Yeah, I don't think he's a Celtic number one. But like I've reiterated and over again, I think.
But could he like coming in like work with the likes of Stevie Woods, like improve him to come that next level? Do you think?
Well,
I'm not saying anything about Dundee United's coaches now, but I'm on about would he be able to come a Celtic number one? Do you think?
Well, Stevie Woods is probably the best goalkeeping coach in the UK, is he? So working under him, it's only going to enhance him, and I think it'll help Barkas as well because it's not exactly help Barkas' morale, is it? The fact that Bain and Hazard's got a game ahead of him this season. Know what I mean? So like I think Joonas agrees, doesn't want to agree, but if Celtic offered money and Bain to Dundee United, I think that would be a decent deal for everybody.
How would you feel about Bain going to Dundee United?
See, in all honesty, like I've not seen enough of him to know if he would dare.
And that's a good thing. That's a good team.
The thing is, right, when he was at Dundee, there was a bit of aggro with him, and there was a few you had a couple of snipes in the paper against United and whatever. And I've seen him a couple of times, and I've seen him I have seen him make a couple of howlers and things like that. The overall consensus, our fan base are keen on him. Put it that way, like, and it's not to do with he was Dundee connection. They've just from what they've seen this season and the games that they've seen, some of the mistakes he's made, they don't want him. I wouldn't be, I wouldn't be overly sort of one way or the other about it, but like I say, I don't think the general consensus is favourable on that one, but then again, I mean, it just depends what happens, it's all speculation at the minute.
And how is our young keeper getting on with you, Ross Doohan? How's he has he been playing a few games for you? Or?
Yeah, he started the last 2 league games, and to be fair, he made a really good save at the weekend when Lee Irwin was through 1-on-1, made a really good save. And he wasn't at fault for either of the goals. We drew 2 each with Motherwell, and it was all the young guys playing. And to be fair, I don't think he had a save to make. And okay, they conceded 2 goals, but it was a great finish for Devante Cole on the volley, and then another sort of close range effort. I think Mark Connolly slid in front of him, and he was going to save it, but Connolly jumped in front of him and deflected it over the young lad. So he's not been at fault for anything. I think the only area he struggled in a wee bit, he probably needs to bulk up a bit because he looks a bit shaky coming for cross balls. But other than that, he seemed solid enough. But it's hard to tell playing in sort of games that don't mean much because most teams are in holiday mode, and it was all young guys playing, so he's not really been tested. But like I say, he's not done anything wrong either. Do you
think Barkas seems to be a bit light being a keeper, going by his waist? Do you think he's a bit light for a keeper?
The thing is the European football sort of different. It's probably not as physical.
Different, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, like I said though, if he's going to play a part, he's got pre-season, so he can easily, with the sort of level of sports science and coaching and all that get, you know what I mean, you can easily beef up,
Yeah, like European keepers, like they seem to be more of an outfielder now than a keeper, don't they? They need to be good in their feet as well. In Scottish football, like they need to be a bit more physical, don't they?
I'm not overly keen on this. Your goalkeepers have got to be good with their feet. I'm from an old school mentality of football, but your goalkeeper's there to keep the ball out the net.
You want your keeper to be half daft? I'd rather he was half daft and good with his feet.
Like myself, when I played in goal, I was more like the Peter Kerr when he said Avits and he kicks the ball over the fence.
But the thing is, I mean, you're right. You're laughing about that, but if my goalkeeper shanked like one into the stand, and okay, you got a few grumbles from the stands. I'd rather that than he passed it straight to a striker and then we conceded from it. I'd rather the ball was in the stand 10 times out of 10, because you're never going to concede.
The Hart-Mouth moment when they try to do the wee back heel shimmy to beat the attacker as they're closing them down.
But Mark,
I don't buy this. I don't buy this as well. That like goalkeepers like Barkas, because he looks like. And I look at all the top goalkeepers in the world: Alisson, Ederson, Ter Stegen. They're all beanpoles. You know what I mean? So there's no any weight difference.
Barkas reminds me of Van der Sar.
Look at that.
I mean, they were a thing.
I don't mean he's a keeper. I mean he's physical.
Yeah.
Mark, is that type of keeper too light for Scottish football?
No, I didn't think so. I didn't think so. I mean, McGregor's not exactly built, is he?
No, I don't think there's it. Like, goalkeepers aren't really, like, I mean, huge, are they? You know, I mean, I don't think that is. I think he just needs to get used to a wee bit more. Like, you can be thin and still be tough. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that just because you're a thinner build, you're any less tough than someone who's 3-4 stone on you.
Wait till you see the size of me, and you wouldn't think I was a goalkeeper if you see the size of me. Jesus.
I think you need to realise as well. Remember, he came for AEK Athens, and like they're massive in Greece. Olympiakos, Panathinaikos, and AEK Athens, A3. I mean, he's not came for a small club either. But like I said, I don't want to go too much into it. You've got to take into account the year that he's came. Like I said, I would put loads of money on it that he's going to be a top goalkeeper.
I have to just switch the live chat there quickly, and I agree with Iceman here on Barry on the live chat. He said Ruud Gullit Flames said goalkeepers are goalkeepers because they can't play outfield, and I agree with that because I couldn't play outfield, so I was crap outfield, so that's why I decided to play in goal. And not saying I was good in goal either, but I played in goal.
And actually, now that I've seen Barry in the chat, I'd love him to comment on when he was there. He would have played with Julian Speroni. And he was small and thin. And he's one of the best goalkeepers that's played in the SPL in the last 20 years. And I'd love to get his opinion on actually seeing him actually play. Because in my opinion, like I said, he was one of the best goalkeepers as well. And he was, like I said, he was tiny. So, like I say, this like whole thing about command and goal. Like, I think Manuel Neuer for Bayern, he's the only goalkeeper I can think of that's one of the best. That's massive and like built out the way as well.
Schmeichel was a bit of a unit.
Yeah, like Schmeichel and Neuer, I think they were very similar, were they? Even in attitude as well.
Yeah, even the way they kind of move their body, don't with their block the ball with their feet, and you know they've very similarities, don't they? Schmeichel and Neuer, don't they?
Like,
you know,
spreading themselves, weren't they?
Yeah.
They just with their arms and legs spread out. Just
sometimes you can see a bit like Mark. You can see a glimpse of Peter and Casper as well, can't you? The way he kind of saves.
Definitely watched his dad playing. Aye.
Moving on from that. Joonas, you've got myself and Mark very confused over a tweet you put up that Celtic are supposed to be signing some youngster called Jesse. It's I can't pronounce it. It's Ikpeme. Who is this youngster?
So he did.
What was this?
You put up a tweet that there was a tweet came out and you commented that Celtic are signing some great youngster. His name was Jesse. And it was Ikpeme. You made someone tweeted this, and you said that he'd be some youngster of Celtic would sign him.
I can't even think when this was.
About 2 weeks ago, was it? Mark, was it?
I have no idea. I don't honestly need to go back. I honestly can't remember what it was.
Myself and Mark looked it up, and there was a Christian teacher that came up. Mark, was it or something like that? Was it?
It was maybe just I don't know what that was about, like.
Yeah, so I'll find that tweet and I'd send that. So Mark, I think we have that covered up. So this player that we were supposed to have signed.
I don't know. I can't think of what I was actually referring to there. I was maybe, I don't know if I was being wide or something, or I was just something that, or maybe I seen something and I just completely.
We thought
I don't.
A joke that we'd missed the joke on after we'd looked.
Yeah,
it was
just put a Christian teacher, Mark, like this.
And I was like, who's this? about this, and I was like,
you know what? It was probably some daft. I was at the wind up or something stupid. Or it sounds like that because that doesn't ring a bell. I can't even remember talking about that, to be fair. So you've got me stumped on that one, lads.
He was a Christian when we typed it in. He was a Christian teacher, and we were looking, going, oh, "It's not him." Like we couldn't find him. Oh.
No, maybe it was someone. Maybe I spelt his name wrong or something, but it doesn't ring a bell. I'd have to go through my tweets.
So, Joonas, there's been rumours going around on some social feeds that Mickey Mallon is being linked to Tranmere Rovers, like, and we've seen Celtic lose managers to teams down the south. You know, is there any truth that you could lose him to Tranmere Rovers, or is it all just rumours going around with yourselves?
I think that was put to bed because the players reported for the pre-season debrief. I think it was on Monday at the training base in St Andrews, and I think the word from that was that he came out and said that he wanted to stay, and he sort of he said that he wants to push for top six, a good cup run. The aim is to reach a cup final and push high up into the league next year, and that was what he said to the players, and he said he wants to stay. He also said in the local media that he'd signed up to a golf membership at St Andrews and he's moved his family and that up here, so he intends to stay. So I think that was just. I think it was just people putting two and two together because Brad Tranmere sat like their manager, although making the playoffs, their manager departed, and it was just an easy bit of sort of journalism to throw together. Like, I don't think there was much sort of weight behind that.
And if he did eventually leave you or things like that, myself and Mark and Michael have been saying for the last numerous weeks that John Kennedy needs to go to a Scottish team and prove himself if he wants to be a Celtic manager. Would you consider John Kennedy being a Dundee United manager of what you saw of him so far this season?
He's not got enough experience. I mean, we're not in a position where we want to sort of strengthen next season. I'm not saying that he couldn't have come in and do a job, but I don't think it's the right sort of. I mean, if he'd had a few years at management and he'd proved his CV that he'd done a decent job, but all he's really done is come in and basically sort of read off the same hymn sheet as what Lennon was doing. So I'm not sure that it would, it would be difficult, you know what I mean? Because he probably would be used to, I mean, he's never worked in a club where his budget will be dramatically less than what he's used to, not being able to go out and play players. He's still going to be working with a different sort of, I just don't think I think it'd be a non-starter. I don't think it'd be well received either,
It tells you a lot as well, isn't it? The fact that he's in charge of Celtic just now, and the fact that you're asking a Dundee United supporter if they would take him there, and even they're saying no.
But like that, in that case, like, what level is John Kennedy at, Mark, do you think? Is he lower than the Scottish Premier League? Should he go down to Scottish League 1 or maybe League 3 in England? Or
no, I think he's good enough for a lower league team in the Premier Division in Scotland. Well, maybe no, you're Dundee United. I mean, I thought Kennedy would have been a lot better than I thought he'd have shown a lot better for Celtic than he has.
Yeah, he is, as he said, like for like with Lennon, hasn't he?
I'm surprised that he wasn't in the running for like the Aberdeen job, because he's a well-respected coach with people that know a lot more about football than me. But now, for what I've seen when he's took over for Celtic, I'm not too sure that he could actually take over like an Aberdeen, a Dundee United or Hibs. But see somebody lower down in the Scottish League, like, I don't even know, Motherwell or Kilmarnock, somebody like that, it would probably be able to do a job for them there.
Like, Joonas, do you think like that, considering he hasn't kind of had his own mark on the Celtic team, like it was just basically like for like with Neil Lennon, as you said, like, has he maybe tarnished his reputation a small bit, you think, by going for jobs?
Well, it depends on. I mean, he was maybe getting told from above that, like, this is you're going with the status quo here. You're just a sort of yes man until the end of the season to sort of appease people or whatever. He's maybe not pulling the strings. He's maybe been told, like, this is who's getting picked, or there's maybe a clique in the, like you said, the Scott Brown clique was maybe like, well, I'm playing him the club captain, and there was pressure from within for him to play the sort of old guard. Even the board might have said, look, we're still paying Edward and Christie and Brown this money, so you're here till the end of the season just to, like, get us over the line. as a firefighter sort of. So you'll be doing what you're told. He was maybe just a puppet. You know what I mean? He was maybe not getting the say. He was just maybe told, like, this is who's playing, and that's it. Like, you know.
Michael, that's interesting. There, what Jones is saying, like that. Maybe he's being told play these players. Do you think Lennon was maybe told play these players, like of Edward Christie and Chama, Oyer? You know.
I don't think so.
I wouldn't agree with that.
So I
No?
just think that he was just picking them because it was Lennon and that was it. I just think it was that delusional that he thought it would work. It's like I think if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, you start to believe it works. And I think that's they just kept picking the same and the same. And look at Kennedy, he's did exactly the same thing. He's just prove it. Like if he ever had a chance of managing Celtic, it was finished after what he's did in the last few games.
Even when we talk about what the board done, and no early in the season, it was, as we've spoke about, we always said Celtic on paper should have been the better team this season, and they weren't. It was as if everybody was just waiting on it clicking, because if it clicked, it would have been a totally different.
Yeah.
And it was just that. It was as if the board were waiting because it would click. Lennon was waiting because it would click, and then even Kennedy thought, "Oh, right, Lennon's away. They'll play for me. They'll do better for me, and it'll click." And it
just didn't, like, so it didn't, Mark. Yeah.
That's basically the way.
I think it just went so bad, Mark. It went beyond repair. You know, this season, like, it just went beyond it, like, didn't it? You know.
That basically, yeah. It was. If the team had clicked, it'd have been a totally different outlook. Even when the protests about Lennon and that, but it just never happened. And then Kennedy,
I know that,
Kennedy. I mean, he didn't say anything.
I knew we were in trouble when Lennon came out in the Champions League qualifiers, and he said about the players leave. You know, if you don't want to be here, leave. I knew from day one that there was going to be trouble in this season in this club. You know, I knew it. Like I knew that gradually Rangers are going to catch us and stuff like that. But I had an awful feeling about this last season that things would go wrong, and they have went wrong. And I think it's due to the fact that Lennon wasn't good enough. And I'm not saying as the bad monk, but he seems to fall out with a lot of players where he goes. You know, we saw with Hibs, we saw with Celtic, like, and with the rumours coming out that he had to be separated from a few players this season, like, you have to think of all in consideration, Mark, don't you? You know.
Sorry, Paul. What was that?
I said, like, with all these stories about him falling out with players, like being dragged away from players in fights, like, and like some of these things, there must be some truth to them now, considering how this season felt so badly, like, you know.
But there's always falling outs in dressing rooms. Next time Barry's on, probably ask Barry about even the falling outs. He's seen the arguments and the things like that happen. But there's still, if you get into work as any job in life, if you don't like your manager, it doesn't mean you do your job any less.
I like to say, me and Joonas have played together at a lower level, and he's played for the teams I played for. And as a captain, I wasn't well liked within the thing, but that was just the way it was. And the fights that I used to have in dressing rooms and everything, and that was even if you won the game. That happens every single week. And at any level.
Exactly.
At any level, because everybody wants to win. No, I mean, like you say, you can win a trophy, but you'll still argue about something that happened in the game. It happens all the time. But we're going back to Lennon. And I love Neil Lennon as a player and as a manager in his first stint, even when he came back to steady the ship after what Rodgers done. But surely if he loved Celtic that much this season, he would have left off his own back months before that he was pushed out. Surely. You know what I mean?
But
I just like...
He thought, I can turn this round, I can make this work.
I think he really thought he could, Mark, didn't he?
Do you think that, Paul? I think he did.
Yeah, I think he did. He had his heart on it like that, yeah.
Even if he was in the same frame of mind that he could turn it round, it was down to the players. If the players,
there's a lot more, Mark. Yeah, there's a lot more to the players that we don't know what happened within the players. Because we said it, Mark, in previous part that there seems to be two groups within the dressing room, and I've listened to Simon Donnelly, and he was saying that even within the two groups, and of all his experience, that Skpe wasn't able to settle the dressing room. Within these two groups, that there was two groups within the Celtic dressing room, one half against the other half. And if you were a dressing room with two different halves, Mark, it's impossible for you to get on in this.
I mean, I'm not going to put the blame for the season on Scott Brown.
But that's what I'm saying. But he wasn't unable to.
As a captain, he should have been like the middleman. We've spoke before how your assistant manager's the buffer between the team and the manager, and the captain's the buffer between the assistant manager and further up the chain. So if it was that kind of thing, unless Scott Brown was the leader of one of the groups, it was on one of the. Do you know what I mean? That was.
Yeah, we don't know. Yeah, we'll actually never will find out, Mark.
You know what I mean? Really, there'll be
never find out
over the years, but I'd like to think there's enough professionals at Celtic that wouldn't let that really affect them as such.
But that's one thing we
was it Lennon as well? Was it Lennon that said that there was when he said that thing, and I can't remember the exact words. Somebody will need to probably correct.
Oh, things. Yes,
want to be here and that.
No,
yeah, but he said that there's been stuff that's happened behind the scenes that's like that will not be able to be commented on or something like that.
I've seen people saying that he said that, but I've not actually seen it. See, like the actual
Mark,
or whatever it is, the quote is.
Mark, we talked about that before. That maybe part of Lennon's agreement leaving that we'll never find out these things because they'd be bound by contract that they'll never come out, whatever happened. So I don't think we'll ever will.
Oh, well, they signed non-disclosure agreements. That's part of most managers' contracts. So they sign them, and if they break them, they can get sued over it, which will probably be like you get sued for your severance pay, which is so you'll never really find out the truth. Because even you read people's autobiographies and it's just their own spin on things again.
I've managed to bring up the quote. It was on February.
Precedent circumstances, weren't this?
Yeah, Neil Lennon insists Celtic disaster season has mitigating circumstances that must be kept secret. Why would you even come out in the press and say that? That's like telling your mate, oh, by the way,
that just sums up our season, really, Michael, don't it? That just sums up our season when your man gets coming out saying stuff like that, don't it?
Conspiracy theory stuff into it, because even Lennon would know himself when he came out and said that everybody's going to start, what if it's this, what if it's that, who's fell out with who, or so and so's pumping so and so's wife, and this you went for that in the dressing room.
John Terry. The bouncer, that's what I call him, the bouncer. He just looks like a bouncer outside the nightclub. You're not coming in here tonight,
Some player, though.
I'm actually surprised he's not linked with us. Moving on, so I have a list of players that I picked up, and who's the best player that Celtic signed from Dundee United, and it'd be the opposite then for you, Jones, who played for both teams. So I have Guy McStevens, Stuart Armstrong, Lucas Luska, Mark Wilson, Barry Robson, Jackie McNamara, Charlie McGrew, Scott MacDonald. We have Scott Allen there, and Nida Sifke, you said, was it?
Nadia
Chifchi. That's the Cork accent coming out. We're not good at pronouncing foreign names, so.
Good at pronouncing Scottish names, yeah.
Yeah. Me with the Irish names. I had a great comment there. I was talking to United Ireland, and he was asking me, do I speak Irish, the Gaelic? And I'm looking going, basic, not even basic, Jesus, it's a shame, because we actually, it's a dying language. Our native language is a dying language within our country,
I feel like that about being Ned. See, like I talk Nedish. Nedish is dying off now as well. 20 years ago, my accent was fine. But the last 20 years it started to fade away and people don't understand what I'm saying now.
Jeez. So going back to the players, we'll move on from accents. And who would you like? Who would you think was the best player for the list that played for both Celtic and Dundee United?
If I was to pick one that made an impact instantly that I thought was outstanding, and I'll probably know what people think, I thought it was Barry Robson.
Yeah, I was looking at the same, Michael. Yeah, Barry
When
Robson.
he came into Celtic, and it was his debut. He scored that header against Barcelona, and Benegor Hestlink scored as well in that game.
He was a player like that went in for tackles. When he wasn't afraid to jump out of tackles. So
that's another one that people always say, like Rangers men and this that. He's one of the biggest Rangers men you can get. But look when he scored against Rangers and that, when he scored the penalty and that. I've never seen many reactions from a player like that. Just the passion he showed when he played.
Was he a Rangers supporter, Michael? Was he?
Yeah, he was a diehard Rangers supporter.
Yeah.
There's been a few interviews in the past. I think it was on Open Goal where I would watch a lot of the stuff, and he was interviewed in that.
But
that's when he started his career at Rangers.
That's just going to show like that if we did make an approach for Lewis Ferguson like that, just because his family history is, it shouldn't come into account, Michael. So it shouldn't who they supported or who their family supported. Like, it should be about the player on the pitch and who he plays for, isn't it?
Yeah, and like I say, Barry Robson, like he says, when he played for United, like he was outstanding for Dundee United. When they lost Barry Robson, that was a real sickener to them. Well, Joonas will be able to tell you.
Another good player, really, and I rate him, and myself and Mark missed him when we were doing the Legends player, is Jackie McNamara. He was a good player for Celtic as well during the years, wasn't he, Jackie McNamara?
Well, he's one of my favourites. I said that in the previous podcast. Like when people used to.
You said that name to us, yes. You said that name to us, and myself and Mark were totally like, oh, we forgot about Jackie McNamara.
Yeah, Jackie Mark, like he says, he was. I mean, all the players for me to pick in the early 2000s is one of my idols. It was you had all the players. It was still Jackie Mark or Maravchik for me. That was like the best standouts back in the day.
Mark, who would you think?
There wasn't that many for me to title. Wouldn't there know? Stuart Armstrong's got to be up there as one of the best. I thought Stuart Armstrong was a great player for us. I thought there'd been a lot more to pick for.
That's we checked and that's what came up.
We were kind of struggling to find players that transferred between the two clubs.
Guy McStevens kind of never really took off at Celtic either, so he didn't. He was in and out of teams, really, wasn't he? Guy.
You want to like Johnny McStevens? He'll tell you, like he says, what he did at Celtic was what he did for Dundee United.
Yeah.
About 1 in every 10 games, you'd see him play well.
Aye, that's Michael spot on. Like, see the GMS, the problem with us. See if every single week was a Dundee derby, he'd be a contender for the Ballon d'Or. But I'll tell you one thing: see if you took him on Tuesday night against Ross County on a freezing cold day in November, he'd be as much use as a chocolate fireguard. Just wasn't interested. If he got kicked in the first 5 minutes, he was a man down for the rest of the game. He was probably good in 1 in every 6 to 8 games for us. He wasn't consistent enough.
And what way was he was a great player for us. Was Stuart Armstrong? He scored some goals. Was he the same with yourself, Jonas?
He was underappreciated at United. People probably didn't appreciate at the time how good he actually was. But yeah, like, see when he left, like, people say, oh, we miss GMS. People will remember GMS because he did like a hocus pocus or like the Gaz getaway, and he did keepy ups over a Kilmarnock boy's head on the touchline and stuff.
A Tom Rogic kind of character.
Yeah.
Brilliance, but no consistency.
Aye, like you say, like he did a bit of skill where he trapped the ball, like balanced it on his foot, did keepy ups over a boy's head and everything. Right? So he makes all the fancy compilation videos. Like he had a box of tricks in that, but like you say, you seen him once in every 8 games if you were lucky. Whereas Armstrong was consistent, and like the younger people just remember GMS did this trick and that trick, but what they forget about is the actual overall contribution from Armstrong was far more detrimental. His loss than GMS's. Like.
I'm right here. I'm reading from Bawz. Didn't he study law as well? Armstrong, when he was with Celtic, he studied to be a lawyer, didn't he?
Yeah, he's got a degree as well. He's an intelligent lad. Yep.
Yeah, going back there.
That's probably for Dundee that got a degree.
That's nasty, that, is it?
I've actually got a degree. You're speaking of a degree holder right now.
First person from Dundee going into a courthouse with shutting down, he's innocent, I say.
You've still got a plumbing degree, so...
Suggest you kept me degree one, a doctor of Christianity.
I basically just turned up and wrote my name on a few pages of paper and they handed us an honours degree. Great scenes.
And Scott McDonald, Jonas, signed for you late on for his career. Did he have any impact with yourselves when he signed for you? Or?
He was probably playing in the worst Dundee United team that I've seen in my lifetime. Worse than the relegation season team under Ray McKinnon. He was just too old and I mean, don't get me wrong, he still scored a few good goals for us, but he was surrounded by absolute incompetence everywhere. So, I mean, we could have had Cristiano Ronaldo up front for that team and we would have struggled to get a point away to Dumbarton that season. Or that bad, like, yeah.
And who from the list, Jonas, would you say was the best player that played for both teams and just who played for yourselves, really, that moved on to Celtic?
It would be a toss-up between Barry Robson and Armstrong, because I've got a Barry, like, it's funny, Michael was talking about Barry Robson there as well. When I was younger, I went to like a Dundee United Open day and I must have been maybe, I don't know, 13 or something like that, 12 or 13. And I had like the card with like all the players' names, and like Barry Robson was like the only person that I was interested in having it signed by, you know what I mean? And like he was my favourite back then as well. I used to love him just because he was passionate. He had what a left foot he had on him and stuff like that. And then Armstrong, as I've got a wee bit older, so it would be one of those two for me. Like probably Robson just shades it just because I was a younger guy at that time as well when he was there. And I think you're always more attached to players when you're a kid.
Who's your Dundee hero, Jonas? Best you've seen? Do you know what I mean? When you were a wee kid and watching them when you were a kid.
Barry.
Barry.
see, it's probably someone like, it sounds daft for you lads because like the guy's still only 30 years old or something, but probably would be someone like from like the 2010 like sort of that cup winning sort of era. It would probably be someone like Johnny Russell or someone like that, or I hadn't, like, you know, just someone that, like, because he just loved playing for the club and he gave 100% every week and stuff, quality player. Like, because I wasn't fortunate enough, I never seen the great sides of the 80s, so I never seen Sturrock and Neri and Malpass and Bannon and all those lads. I can only go by the guys that...
The players you saw, yeah, exactly.
You know, I remember, so I've had a few, like, there's been a few cult heroes, but probably someone like Johnny Russell or even someone like maybe Wee Gomez or whatever, when he was there in the middle of the park and stuff. They were all brilliant players. That 2010
Albin was good as well, eh?
Yeah, well, the best midfield duo that we've ever had was, in my lifetime, I would say, that I enjoyed watching the most was when we had Prince Bobbin and Morgaro Gomez in the midfield. That was our sort of, they were the heart of our midfield for about 4 or 5 seasons and included the cup win, and they were up there with my favourites. So, be they guys, Russell.
Yeah, where did he go, that Prince Bob? He's a good player.
Watford, and then he came back and won the league with like Hearts and stuff and that as well. And the guy's only like recently retired, and Gomez was still playing for Falkirk this season in like League One and that. So like again, it sounds daft for a 32-year-old guy to still be speaking about lads that are still playing, but they're the guys that, well, that's the best ever United team I've seen in my lifetime. We won the cup in 2010, and I was 21 by then. But you know, I wasn't, like I say, my introduction into Dundee United was us fighting relegation and relegation battles and didn't see very many good sides until, you know what I mean? So that's the sort of lads that I would go with.
Back in that 80s team, because I was talking about Davy Neri, that you'll know. Remember the boy, Ralphie Milne?
Yeah.
Ralph Milne.
What a player. Honestly, like, that Dundee United team back in the day, and like I said, they never had... Yeah, from that team. Well, that's what was funny about that Dundee United team. Jim McLean had them on 10-year deals, so they didn't need agents because they weren't getting sold anywhere anytime soon.
Lifetime contract. This current team, Jonas, who would be your prize at? I know Seagas, you said, is an asset, like, but this Colombian lad seems to be a big asset for you, doesn't he?
You're probably on about Cameroon lad. You're on it if like wee John Doe Fuchs you're probably talking about. Yeah, he's probably like, he's up there with my favourites. I like him. Benji. I'm a big, you know who's a really good player that I really like? The big Scouse lad at the back, the boy Ryan Edwards. He's really grew on me. He's been outstanding this season. Like, big Liverpudlian lad. Like, but great bloke as well. Like, loves the club and stuff like that. And he's just, he was a bit shaky when he came in because he'd never had a pre-season and stuff. The guy's got quite an interesting backstory. He recovered from cancer and things like that. But the guy would honestly you could throw bricks into the box and the boy would header them away for you. Like, he's been absolutely outstanding for us this season as well. So he gets an honorary mention. Like,
what about that young
Sorry, Michael.
What about that young guy that Celtic were rumoured to be interested in? I think it was 2 seasons ago. That Louis Appel.
Yeah.
What about him?
He struggled this season, Michael, if I'm being honest. He's sort of, last season was really his sort of breakthrough season in the Championship. The season before he sort of came on at the tail end, but he's found it tough in this league. Like, he's got all the assets, he's got pace and strength in that, but he's found the jump up difficult.
Would you think, like we saw with a lot of our players this season, especially the new players setting in, like, would having no fans in the stadium helping him out maybe affect his game, Joonas, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like, don't get me wrong, he scored a cracking goal against Hibs in the Cup last season and obviously seemed to have a good vibe with the crowd in that as well. But even just, I think the step up probably did catch him a wee bit as well. He's just a wee bit sort of a bull in a china shop. He just gets the head down and tries to charge through people and that. He just needs to be a bit more composure. He's still got ability. And I think he's 21, but he's starting to get to that cut-off point. I'm a believer, and if you're 19, 20, 21, you need to really start making your mark at those ages.
Yes, exactly.
People band about the term youngster, but then they talk about guys at 22 that have only just broken into the first team. You've got to really be knocking on the door from about 18, 19 onwards if you're going to have a serious impact. But that's just my opinion. You lads might disagree, but...
Yeah, but we saw it like that. A lot of our youngsters, like, they'd break into the first team or they're in around the first team. Like, a great example, that was Montgomery and Dembele in a game against St. John, and then they just disappear. You know, that seems to be one of our biggest problems, Jonas, is that we don't have players able to break into the first team, you know, or they're not getting a clear pass. And that's something where I was very impressed with you tonight, that your board were able to say a clear path that you for your youth academy, you know.
Well, like you say, they've spent that much money on the academy and like the infrastructure and getting all this coaching staff and getting them up to elite level 1 and stuff like that. We've sort of put our eggs in that basket, but you've got to, because we don't have the finances to go and buy players. So we need to have a conveyor belt of youth. And Dundee United, even back in the 80s, was like that, because like some of these lads, like, you know, like were from Dundee that came through, even in that team back then, like, you know, like boys like what's the boy's name again? So what's his name? His name Riley. I can't remember the guys. I think it's John Riley or whatever. The guy, he was like man of the match at the new camp. He's a Dundee lad and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So that's going right back to the 80s. We've had a history of bringing through youth.
So we're just going to move it on from the players. One player we forgot, and I just saw in the live chat, was Willow Flood. We forgot Willow Flood. You know, that played for, I think, he another player that kind of never really made that Celtic, Michael, wasn't he, Willow Flood?
God, he was dire. I last year, he plays at my local golf club where I play golf, and I actually think, and it's hard to actually say because he's bad at golf, but he's probably better at golf than he is at football, I guess.
So next season, Joonas, you were saying you should be pushing for 6, but do you think Celtic will be ready to run the table, the league title back next season, or is it a big ask considering the big huge rebuild we have this next season?
It's too early to say. Like, you'd probably be better asking people that question come July, because when the real business starts on the 29th of July. You know what I mean? It's too. I mean, I think our manager's been set the target that we've to look at top 6, to break into the top 6, go on a good cup run and stuff like that. Which is, I mean, realistically, a club at our size should be challenging for the top 3, not like the first 2 places, but we should be going for 3rd with the likes of Aberdeen, Hibs, Hearts, and stuff like that. And because we've done that historically anyway, so that's where we should be aiming towards. And maybe not next season, but the following year certainly. But yeah, like you say, mate, it's too early to see where anybody's really going to be, depending on, because nobody's done anything. The season's only just finished, so I mean, you've got to really, you can assess maybe end of June. You can maybe say, right, we've brought in so and so,
and who you have and stuff like that. Are you expecting many players to leave over the summer transfer window?
It just depends. I mean, probably 4 or 5 out, and I would probably need 6 or 7 bodies in, depending on who leaves. Segrist will definitely be away. Mark McNulty depends on if we can agree a deal with Reading to bring him back. Shanklin, depending on if there's any.
Is he on loan? Is he McNulty? He's on loan?
He's on loan from Reading, so he's returned to his parent club. He's keen to come back, but it depends on if, like, I mean, he's probably on about 10-12 grand a week at Reading, and we'd maybe be able to offer him 3 or 4. So it's whether he wants to take the wage cut and if the clubs can agree a deal. So
exactly, you have to work in your budget too as well.
Yeah, there's a long way. There's a long way for anything to materialise on that front. But like I say, we'll see what happens. I think we're 5 or 6 short of being able to compete with your Aberdeens and Hibs and that anyway.
Mark, do you think that's a realistic target? Like that the top 6 and maybe fight for Europa League spot with like Aberdeen and Hibernian?
Well, what Bob said on the live chat, most clubs should be aiming for 3rd place. For me, Dundee United should be fighting for 3rd place in the league. Joonas will know a lot better how near that is, but they should just be under that level, but pushing towards that. Do you know what I mean?
Aye, definitely.
Aye. I've nowhere they should be nowhere near fighting relegation or anything like that, nowhere in the world, but they should be, their aim should be 3rd place or as close to that as they can get.
Well, people go on about how big Aberdeen and Hearts and Hibs and that are. Like, obviously, I'm at this neck of the woods and obviously I've seen Dundee United quite a lot. Dundee United are as big as Aberdeen, Hearts and Hibs as a football club.
Agree with that, 100%.
They're absolutely, their history is massive. And like it says, they'll want to be back challenging for a minimum of 3rd place next season. Like I say, Mickey Mellon will get a chat. Like it says, people are talking about that. He was meant to be going back to Tranmere and that, but he's already came out and said he's moved his family up. He wants to stay.
Yeah. So
he maybe wouldn't have had that option earlier in the season if there was fans. If there was fan pressure on him. So you might get a free one.
That's good for the players that are already there and they're staying, knowing that their managers is making this commitment to the club as well. Joonas, isn't this? He wants to stay and stuff like that, like, you know.
Well, the thing is, we had that problem with Nielsen jacking it in last year. All of a sudden, just went to Hearts, and then we had that whole court battle where Hearts were trying to say, well, we shouldn't get promoted, we should be given the title, and tried to keep us down. So the court case dragged on till about a week before the season began. You know, so we didn't even know what division we were playing until about 2 weeks before the season was due to start. So it's crucial that we can't chop and change managers every summer because you need continuity to have success. So just for continuity's sake, I think Mellon will be on a short leash for how long he gets if things don't go well to begin with. But I think I would just keep him just because. I mean, the worst case scenario, you're chasing a manager until mid-July. Players don't know if they're coming or going. The backroom staff don't know what's happening, and then you're entering the season throwing together a squad, and you're up against it. So a settled approach and hopefully targets in early doors will stand us in good stead. Well, that's the hope anyway. Like,
go on, Mark.
Did Dundee United give a director of football?
We've got a sporting director. So basically, we've got the Americans are sort of hands-off owners because they don't know anything about football. They had a baseball team which the boys sold, and I think they've got an ice hockey team. But he says, look, I don't know anything to do with the day-to-day running a sports team. So we've got football people that are on deck that run that side of it, and he oversees everything. So he makes the final call on everything. But he's got guys that know how to run deal with football and sides doing that side of it, you know.
They're definitely better run than Celtic are.
That's what I was kind of want to discuss. That like today was to get a different view of what other structures SPL teams have, and for Dundee to have such a good structure, Mark. And then you look at us, like we're in a shambles from the board down, like, aren't we? You know.
Every department, we've said it before, Paul, every department needs an overhaul. And that's obviously what these Americans have done at Dundee United.
And I think that was the best thing, Mark, that came out of...
there was a massive overhaul because the club was completely... The books and everything, when they come in, they basically did a root and branch review and ripped everything apart and started it again.
Yeah.
So, how long have you been there, Joonas?
2018 they took over, so this will be their 3rd full season coming up. They took over...
Would they have a 5-year plan then, Joonas? Yeah, like a 5-year plan. Yeah.
You should see when they came in, But could you think when they came in, could you see you being where you are the now? Does that mean,
But
what I mean?
yeah, well, what encouraged me as soon as they came in, it wasn't just the owner and his son that were announced, the chairman and the vice chairman. It was the sporting director and the managing director. The four of them were unveiled at the same press conference, so the structure was already there. You know what I mean? And then they went and recruited, like, academy coaches, sports nutrition. They just went through every single department and just took a wrecking ball to the old structure.
They modernised the club.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We were basically, we were. I mean, we were still at the point where we were sending out newsletters and everything, and we weren't even really engaging on social media. They just brought the club forward. You know what I mean?
I think, Mark, that's what one thing that I took out of this meeting with Dominic McKay. I think that he saw that the club is not in with the modern day football, and that's
seemed to be modernised,
and that's where he wanted to modernise every single department in the club. So he actually seen it as Celtic support as well. How bad.
We're listening to Joonas here, Paul. Dundee United are miles in front of Celtic.
Yes, put us really how outdated our football club is in the backlog. Stuff that I thought I wouldn't be hearing tonight. But I thought it was an interesting topic just to see how different clubs were run, Michael.
Yeah, well, United, like I says, as Joonas has already pointed out, before the owners took over, Dundee United were in disarray from top to bottom. Mm-hmm. You just need to look at the progress in the last 3 years.
That's what I'm saying. They learn from
That's what happens when you get guys in that are.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you get guys in that are, like I said, they know how to run a business, and they employ the other guys to do the job for every department.
The right people in the right department, Mark, isn't it?
Definitely, 100%. Keep the football decisions to football people and the business decisions to business people, and you'll no go far wrong.
Correct.
And ourselves, lads, before we move on, are we going to push for archery or mainly just concentrate on the league? Are we going to give maybe Europe a backbone at this season, do you think, or what way should we go for it?
Next season, and everybody's got different opinions, there needs to be a league, a cup win, and the must to reach a group stage of either the Champions League or the Europa. It needs to be one or the other, in my opinion, for it to be any chance of success.
Especially for revenue with the pandemic and everything this season, Michael, isn't it? Yeah.
And like I say, the league's a must win, because, like I say, we've talked about next season, the season after, is automatic qualification to the group stages. So the money that's involved
if that's not going to more any Celtic player like qualification to the group stage, what can, Michael? Do you know what I mean?
Like you say, the fact that you're playing for your place in the Champions League proper.
Yeah, and this is what the players signed for Celtic, Mark, to play in these Champions League games, isn't this, as a young player?
Well, we've seen players leaving, or we want to play Champions League football. As I've said,
and going to
play
Celtic, football.
You've got
move into likes of Norwich and stuff.
You've got you've got a better chance of playing Champions League football for Celtic than you have for like Burnley or, do you know what, Bournemouth, things like that. All that talk means is they want Champions League wages. They want the big.
That was like what Paul was saying, like when Gary Hooper went to Norwich.
That's not a bigger club that's not a bigger club than Celtic, and that's Christie wants to go to a bigger league, and that's the likes of the teams that's interested in him is Norwich and Burnley.
What's funny about the Norwich thing is, like, he said that he's going to Norwich because it'll give him a better chance of getting in the England team. What he needs to remember as well, that when he was in the same team as Fraser Forster got into the England team while playing for Celtic.
And he was another player whose career, Mark, just slipped away after he moved from Celtic. Really, it was Gary Hooper, wasn't he?
It's dark. I think he'll look back on it. He's probably a lot richer than he would have been if he stayed at Celtic, but football-wise, I think he'll look back and regret leaving.
I say there's a lot of players out there, Mark, isn't there?
When was the last time a player for Norwich got an England cap?
Probably Chris Sutton.
Probably, yeah.
See at Norwich when he got his cap?
I think so. And then he went to Blackburn, did he?
No, but I was thinking Sutton, but I wasn't sure. But so that talk again, I want to move to England to try and get into the England squad. You're not going to get into the England squad playing for Norwich and Burnley,
No.
things like that. Again, it was just down to money.
Look at Edward. Like, I can see him. Like, maybe it's too soon this, but next season, like, even if he was with Celtic now, he'd be caught up to the French national team. He's that good. Like, it's not who you play for, Mark. It's how you are as a player, and if you're good enough to play for the national team, they'll call you up. You know.
I think it still comes down to the league you're playing in. I do. I think that's the way international odds are announced. I think it does come down to if you're playing in one of the bigger leagues, you're more entitled.
I think that has been, I think, England's problem for years, picking out of the top teams.
Well,
In England did this.
I read something the other week on Twitter, and I think it was Jamie Carragher and Gary Neville were picking their England squad, and none of them even had that. Is it Sanchez, or the?
Jadon Sancho for Dortmund.
None of them had him in their squads. Do you know? It's just again the English league's the best league in the world. Everybody needs to be playing in it, and just forget actual football that you're watching.
That's England all over, though, is it? No.
But just before we finish, Joonas, there was Lee Griffiths being left out of the Scotland international team for the Euros. Was Stephen Clark right to let him out, considering his form this season, or would you have taken him because he's a proven goal scorer? Joonas? You there, lads?
I'm still here, Paul.
I'm still here. Sorry. My phone had just locked itself and I couldn't get back on it. Sorry about that. No. What? There's two ways you can look at the Griffiths thing. You're not surprised that he's not in the squad because I look at his contribution. He's never really looked fit the whole season. I mean, you boys will be able to tell me.
Yeah, we agree totally with you. Yeah.
Has he certainly hasn't set the header. Like, I've not seen the guy play really at all this season, but he doesn't seem like he's did much for you lads. And also, there's that side that, okay, you could maybe bring him on as a maverick and you could maybe stick one in the top corner from 30 yards for you. But there's guys that have been professional and trained all season and been dedicated and contributed to their clubs a lot more than he has. So from a footballing side, you can't be surprised, I don't think,
Mark, you're not surprised by this decision by Clark not to include Griffiths?
No, I'm not. I don't really bother much about international football, but I will hope Scotland do well in the Euros. But I wasn't surprised at all. He's shown.
Maybe he can spend this summer actually trying to get himself fit if he's going to be at Celtic next season,
Well, that's what he's got to concentrate on. He's got to concentrate on getting himself fit physically, mentally, for whether it's going to be Celtic, Aberdeen, or wherever he's going to be. That's going to be his main concern now. I don't think Lee Griffiths expected to be called up, to be honest, Paul.
Mike?
Yeah, I would have loved him to be in the Scotland squad because he's Scotland's most natural finisher, but he's not helped himself this season. I'm the opposite. Me and Joonas actually like international. We're actually we're hoping to get into England for the match to even just be in the vicinity to actually support them. But there's still a part of me that I would expect him to be in the squad. Because, like you said, he just guarantees you goals. And even if he was just on in the last 5-10 minutes because you need something, I mean, he's the man you would want to bring on.
So, lads, I think we'll call it there. We went on a little bit longer than we expected, but as always, Joonas brought in some good chats with us tonight. My thanks again to Michael and Joonas for coming on the show. For myself, thanks for tuning in. Mark, over to yourself and the lads.
Just thanks again, Paul, for everything you do. Mike and Joonas for coming on. Joonas, you're brilliant again. You're more than welcome any time, mate. And for everybody tuning in, if you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button and remember, hit the like button as well. Good night, lads. God bless.
Cheers for having us again, lads. Appreciate it.
No bother.
See you after. Thank you.